So, folks, co-hosts, listeners, I have a wonderful announcement to make.
Oh.
You're getting married.
I don't want to brag. Well, firstly, no. I don't believe in marriage. I'm getting divorced, actually. Nina, no selling my divorce joke. Just like always. This is why we're getting divorced.
Yeah, obviously.
I have got everything I needed out of you. Hard manual labor for yesterday. And now...
Wow, it was all just for that.
I sold 6 books yesterday.
Hey,
That's
nice.
not to brag.
That's more books
But
than
I'm not here to talk about that.
What
I'm
percentage of 55 is 6?
Doesn't matter. I also pulled other people that came back while you
did.
So I probably sold closer to like 12 books.
It's not quite 10%, I think.
Anyway,
I have a real thing to talk about, okay? I don't give a shit about this other stuff.
Oh, okay.
None of this other stuff is important because I have a huge milestone has been cleared. I'm no longer the most illiterate member of the podcast.
Aren't you?
Yes,
Oh,
I know.
that's
Everyone's
right.
saying Noah doesn't know how to read. Noah only reads 1 book a year. Blah, 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 blah. Other comments that I can't read. That's not no longer true. Guess who read not 1, but 2 books over his vacation?
Nice.
Was it
Was it you?
It was me. 'Twas I.
Wait, now who are you saying is now the most illiterate member of the podcast?
This is what? This is your
I don't know.
3rd book this year now? So
This is my 3rd book this year. And I'm halfway through a novel right now.
that makes you like maybe...
Novella?
Nina, Emma, how many books have each of you read this year?
2.
Okay, so I think that makes you potentially the
No.
most member of the podcast. Because this
Yeah,
year
I've
I've read
Emma.
Okay,
Sons,
I've read a
Haunting
lot.
of Hill House, and I'm currently reading The Forgotten Lyric. So
I've read...
Emma, it's hard to be all the way down there. I understand. I used to be like you. But I'm better now.
Excuse me. I read Trust of the Emerald Sea, which is the first Sanderson one that dropped this year. I read Summer Sons, obviously.
of course.
I read a couple other short books. I read Pain by my friend Bailey, which is a time travel, like cosmic horror. It's cute. Pane. It's short. If you like lesbians and time travel, maybe look into it. And then I am currently reading Killers of the Flower Moon, which the Scorsese movie is based off the events that the book covers, which are real events. And they're really, really interesting, and the book's well written, and I'm having a great time.
On the other hand, I'm reading much cooler books.
He's reading much more fun books.
I read 2 books.
Nice.
One of them, Red Dragon. Another one, you may be familiar, Silence of the Lambs.
Oh,
That's how they say
I read
Nice.
2 books. I'm very proud of this fact because I read one on the way to Seattle and I read the other on the way back.
Now, how many books have you read this year that didn't have a cannibal man in them?
Hey,
Was there a cannibal in...
Noah's got a niche interest, and we should encourage
Is Hannibal
that.
not in Red Dragon?
Yes, he's in Red Dragon, but like, is there a cannibal in Summer Sons that I don't remember?
Oh.
Noah doesn't even remember the cannibal from Summer Sons.
I feel...
Oh my
He wasn't
god.
paying attention at all.
I mean,
in that
whatever
case-
Eddie and Andrew had going on was close.
Okay. I'm about to enter a reading tournament arc, so that I'm not considered the most illiterate. So as we famously remember, I didn't finish Summer Sons.
Right.
Oh, did you count that as one of your books?
I counted it as like half.
Oh, okay.
And then I'm almost done with The Forgotten Lyric, so I counted that as the other half.
Fair enough.
And then I read the Hunger Games prequel.
I need to read that. Yeah, that's on my list.
It was really good.
Now that it's in
I liked it.
paperback.
Yeah. And then I have... The problem is the next book I want to read is... I have it literally right by my computer, so I can pull it right now.
It's the Bible. It's
not-
the One Piece.
It's almost as
Necronomicon.
big as the Bible. So it's The Priory of the Orange Tree,
Oh, right.
yeah.
which
I remember when you bought
heard
that.
amazing things, really excited, Look how thick
It's
this
huge.
motherfucker is.
Yeah, Becca's
For,
got one of those as
listeners,
well. The
that's-
thing is fucking huge. It's like a
What?
dictionary.
Like that's forearm sized.
So I feel
Oh,
like
yeah,
if
that's
I
tiny.
read
That's
that,
probably
it
better.
should count for like 2 books.
Yeah, I almost feel like the shorter books I'm reading don't even count. Oh, I
Don't
also
take this
read
from me.
I read a couple other
Sometimes I read a
shorter.
really long article and I say that counts.
Jeff looking at the Gilmore-ish website. This is a book.
Listen, if I've read the whole thing,
Yeah. I'm really excited for our book episode next year, though.
Yeah, we're gonna have some like actual options because I've bought some horror books that I'm gonna work through as well that I will hopefully be able to recommend. If they're good, we'll find out.
Yeah. We won't have another Summer Sun situation.
Summer Suns. I have grown.
Sorry, Lee.
Sorry, Lee.
I liked it.
Sorry, Lee.
But yeah, I have a movie I would like to gab a ghoul about.
All right.
Yeah.
So I talked about this in the server a little bit, but I watched the scariest, I'm pretty sure it was voted the scariest movie to ever come out.
The Exorcist 2?
No.
3.
No. Obviously, I'm talking about The Meg.
Oh, that's right.
Of course, right.
Yeah.
Sorry, it was
right.
so scary I blacked it out.
So scary. It was some dumb fun. I ended up having a fun enough time with it that I didn't regret it. I know, like, the second one came out a couple months ago or something, and so I looked it up online to see if it was streaming anywhere, and I could rent it for like $20, and I was like,
Oh, please.
I'm not gonna do that. But
No.
once it's like $3 or $4 to rent, or it's streaming somewhere,
sure.
I'll
Yeah,
watch
something
it.
reasonable.
But it was dumb. It's about a big shark, and you know they kill the shark. That's the
damn it.
movie.
Thanks
Rest
a lot,
in
Jason
peace, the Meg.
Statham.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Jason Statham.
Yeah.
Why'd you say that in a good way, but Jeff said it in distinctly a bad way?
Yeah.
You're like, yeah, thank you,
Nina
Jason.
thinks that
Yeah,
killing
thanks,
giant
Thanks,
endangered
Jason.
sharks is like a good thing.
I don't know.
You don't know.
I'm
You
not
don't
even
know
the
if it's
one
a good
here who has a
thing.
fear of sharks. I just kind of think the Meg needs to die.
Wow.
This just in, Nina fucked
Wow.
up. That's
Wow.
fucked up.
I watched
You're
the
so-
trailers.
Just like Dr. Loomis right now.
I watched
Like
the
if
Nina
Dr.
looks at
Loomis
trailers.
sharks,
hated a
and it's
shark,
just
and
like,
he was just going around like, that shark
No.
is pure evil.
I watched the trailers. That shark was in a spot that shark should not have been. I don't know how everyone was
The
supposed to
ocean?
react.
He lives
No,
there.
it goes to a beach at one point.
It goes to like
Okay,
Which
he's a shark. He
also-
can go to the beach.
Which
Is it
also
illegal for
realize
a
this
shark
was
to go to the beach?
Communism, and you
Why
can't
are
go
the
to the
beaches
beach.
segregated against sharks? This is unjust.
Okay,
and
okay,
wrong.
shut up.
with
shut up.
them showing how big that shark was multiple times. Like they showed the fin like off in the distance of the water and made it look like as tall as a 4-story building sort of deal. There's no way that shark should have been able to fit in beach
Get up
water.
and run the beach. Yeah.
God, no.
I
But,
think
you
I
know,
watched
it is what
the.
it
Well,
is.
but I mean, statistically, most shark attacks do happen in less than 3 feet of water.
So I watched the kill count for the Meg, and they actually pulled up like how big the measurements of how big that shark is. Way smaller than I envisioned it from the trailers.
Oh,
Yeah.
Like downright
I
tiny.
think
in
the
fact.
scale is really off.
The
looking at the
scale
trailers.
is what needs to. It's what it needs to be.
Yeah.
That's what the scale is.
Absolutely. But Meg, like 6 stars. It was,
Okay.
it was
That's
fun.
higher than
Okay.
I
But
would have
dumb.
thought. But
yeah.
Yeah.
so like Fast and Furious, like but with a shark was
Yeah,
the vibes
yeah,
I got from it.
kind of,
Okay.
kind of.
Yeah, that's what it looked like pretty much. Yeah. All right.
Yeah. Cool. All right.
Does anybody else have some ghouls to gab?
I've got another nautical ghoul, actually. I watched the movie Sea Fever.
I've
What
never
is
heard of that.
It came out in, it hit festivals in 2019 and then was kind of like denied a theatrical release and went straight to streaming in 2020 due to pandemic stuff, I think is what
Oh, yeah.
happened.
That
It's
darn
pretty solid.
pandemic.
You know, it follows a solid story of a college marine biologist who goes out with this fishing ship to do studies of things and such, and then they encounter like a monster of sorts. It's pretty neat, pretty fun. Is it like incredible or something? Nah, but like it's a fun watch. I had a good time with it.
Okay.
Nice.
So I have a confession to make. Years and years ago, I said I'd never watch JoJo's Bizarre Adventure because the fans pissed me off so much. You said marine biologist, and I went, OMG, Jotaro?
Oh my god. You're one of them now, Nina.
I am one of them now.
Marine
It's
biology.
horrible.
Is that a
Is
JoJo's
that a
reference?
JoJo's reference? Me, a person who's literally very good friends with multiple marine biologists.
This is the same
You've
energy as me
betrayed them
pointing.
all.
I have.
This is the same energy as when I pointed at everyone at the con with blue hair except the Miku cosplayers, saying, "Oh my God, Nina, it's Hatsune Miku."
Oh my god. This is different, but Piper has a game when we're at conventions of how many people look like Griffin McElroy.
Oh no,
That's a very good one as
That's
well.
a lot. That's a lot.
It is a lot. They just have a counter. Well, they'll point at somebody and say the number, and like it'll keep going up throughout the weekend. And oh my gosh, it's so bad.
That's so
That's
funny.
great.
What I was doing is I was keeping track of the Demon Slayer cosplayers that I saw to see which character got played the most. Surprisingly, only a handful of Tanjiros, although there was a big swell of them later on in the day. Only one Inosuke.
I
It's
saw.
mostly
I ended
just
up seeing
Nezuko's
two.
and Zenitsu's. You saw a second Inosuke? All
I
right.
saw a second Inosuke after you left.
Nice.
I saw a lot. Who's the butterfly lady? And I
Oh,
don't.
shit,
There's
what's
two
her
of
name?
them. There's her.
Shinobu.
There's her.
Shinobu.
Shinobu, and then there's her apprentice, right?
Right.
Yeah, I don't remember her name.
And I saw
doesn't
a
talk.
few of those walking around. A Demon Slayer cosplays, and I mean this with a lot of respect, are so easy to do.
Oh,
it
having
seems
That's what
the
makes
jacket
them
because-
so
mostly.
appealing.
Because the character designs in Demon Slayer are phenomenal. They're so distinct and well done.
You know 'em
the
when you see him, yeah.
the hair to the robe design that they have to customize to the like very simple uniform underneath, and the swords obviously. Peak character design. They've done a very good job, which
Good
is
stuff, yeah.
so fun. But yeah, no. I love con games. I didn't have one other than the Miku one, which is very funny to me.
I was just about the books real quick. I know I think, let me rewind that. I was talking with a friend of the podcast, Edge, about this because Edge has listened to the entire series. And basically, we haven't talked about Red Dragon yet because I read them out of order. I did Silence and then Dragon because you can read them that way. It doesn't matter. And for anyone who's worried about the trans representation issue that a lot of people are able to throw at Silence of the Lambs, because they really do double down a lot on the fact that, Buffalo Bill is not trans, actually. He's just a fucked up guy. And that's like
Right.
kind of the angle that they decide to go with. It is handled a little bit better in the book. I'm not going to say that it's handled great because it's still obviously the situation that it is.
Sure.
But I just wanted to say the funny trivia I have learned about that is the author in no way intended it to be a transphobic story and was dumbfounded that people were being transphobic about his character.
I have to. This is a conversation we had before, so I'm just going to say exactly what I said when I was talking to Noah. I've actually had this conversation with a few people where I've come away as equally baffled with them as I am with the writer of this series, Thomas Harris, which is where they're like, I can't believe people would take my story this way. I never intended it this way. And I'm like, okay, but and it's usually the people that I'm talking to, or like in Thomas Harris's case, are dudes. And they are dudes who have never had to think about these specific subject matter. And it's like, I think it's just a blind spot where they don't realize that in telling a story that even kind of resembles a thing, you are going to be held up against the thing, and you are going to have to think about how your story affects that group of people. And while Thomas Harris's solution seems to have been, I will write in a hospital that says outright, like, don't hold this man up against trans people. Trans people are nothing like this, which is like how they have Johns Hopkins literally be like, I can't believe you would reach out to us about our records of surgery rejects because our patients have a hard enough time living their lives as it is, and now you're trying to tie them to this case.
Yeah, there's like a whole chapter devoted to explicitly stating trans people are not like this.
But obviously he thought that would be enough, but he doesn't have the like lived experience to understand the nuance of it. So he thinks that like that's enough to completely cut off the conversation and that the conversation no longer needs to happen. And I've seen that with a few other writers in like the past where it's just been like, no, if you didn't want your story to be held up this way, then you should have picked completely different subject matter and not even touched this. So you signed up for this. I hate to tell you.
The book, it reeks of guy who's trying to be an ally but doesn't actually have enough queer friends to know like what he's actually really touching on.
Right, yeah, where it's like the
well-intentioned,
intent is
not
definitely
perfectly
there,
executed.
but, yeah.
All that
But
to
the
say,
execution,
though,
it's
the book
interesting.
is really good. And Red Dragon is also really good, but
That's what I've
they're
always
also very fucked up.
I'm
So,
excited to read them eventually. They've been on my list forever because I think I mentioned this on the podcast before. Thomas Harris is like the only Baylor alumni that I give a shit about because of these books.
Nina says that like Willie
What
Nelson
about
didn't drop out of
me?
Baylor. Wow, Nina.
Wow.
Dang.
Ignoring Willie Nelson, technically not an alum, and
Willie
Emma,
Nelson dropped
definitely
out.
an alum.
Willie Nelson dropped out.
Who
so he
cares?
doesn't count.
One might say that's more respectable.
No, it literally is. He was in law school and he dropped out because he wanted
Nelson
to
was
like
in
focus
law
on music.
school.
Yeah, lawyer Nelson, the Honorable Judge Nelson, possibly.
Yeah. Fun facts about Willie
oh my
Nelson
God.
that I
I didn't know
learned
that.
because I had thought he got kicked out for smoking weed, but it turns out he was very much like studying hard and then just decided he wanted to pursue music instead.
Go
Model
figure. That's
student
probably why
Willie
he.
Nelson.
That's
That's
awesome.
probably why he has
Yeah.
so many compelling arguments about why we should legalize weed, other than just I like to get high. Ha, ha,
Right,
ha,
yeah.
Ha, ha, ha.
Wow.
Anyway, that's my fun fact for the day and all of the ghouls. I don't have a ghoul to gab, but I do have the Willie Nelson story, I guess.
That's pretty great, honestly. That's on par with a ghoul, I think.
Yeah,
Oh,
I
thank
agree.
you.
it's pretty scary.
All in favor of calling it a ghoul? All right, that's a unanimous vote. Cool. Congratulations, Nina. You ready to kick it in?
I think we're ready to kick it in.
I think I'm ready to put that in there.
That's what anyway.
Welcome back to Casual Obsession, the horror movie podcast where we talk about horror movies. As usual, I am your host. I can't even say as usual. As recently again, I'm your host, Noah.
He's back.
With me is Nina,
Hi, I'm Nina.
Emma,
Hi, I'm Emma.
and Jeff.
Hello.
Now this week we watched a movie. We watched a movie that has a number in it. And the number is also
13.
the word.
13 Ghosts.
Fuck,
We watched
13 Ghosts. We watched 13 Ghosts. We did not watch 13 Ghosts. Maybe someday. I could watch 13 Ghosts again.
Probably, I assume.
Sure.
Someone else told me I needed to watch it the other day.
Okay,
so-
here's the thing. 13 Ghost fans are either rabid or they're like, yeah, that was pretty good. There isn't really an in-between.
Oh,
like-
today I just found out that I'm a 13 Ghosts fan, but I'm the okay, it was good kind. Because, like, I
That's
thought it
hilarious.
was just, like, fine, but I would never have called myself a fan.
There is a rabid following to that movie.
Yeah, I don't...
But we did not watch 13 Ghosts.
No, we did
No,
not. We
no,
watched
we didn't, actually.
We watched Se7en.
Se7en.
The Sevening.
The way you said that,
1995.
the way you said that just made me think of how Nina says Nina Wolverthrina for their Tumblr.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
When it's not actually correct, but that's the way you
Yeah,
want
it's
to say
actually
it.
wrong. It's Wolverina, but that doesn't flow at all.
No, it doesn't.
Not as well
yeah,
as
we watched
Se7en.
Seven.
We watched Se7en.
It's like
Brad
Fan
Pitt, Morgan Freeman,
David
a
Fincher.
secret third actor, and
Gwyneth Paltrow.
directed by a secret fourth actor.
Arlie Ermy.
I don't know who the fuck that is.
Who's the police
No one
chief?
cares about him.
All right, say it again.
Directed by David Fincher.
Yeah, David Fincher. Thanks, David Fincher.
Also, Alfonso Freeman, very briefly. That's Morgan Freeman's son.
Oh,
He's a fingerprint technician.
that guy.
Oh,
Yeah.
I see.
Nice. I'm gonna give you guys a real quick what is going on. Probably, frankly, by recounting the beginning scene of the movie, the heavy tone setting scene, because the movie really it hits the ground running. You don't get a lot of time to ease into this one.
Yeah, it just starts.
Yeah. We start with Morgan Freeman getting suited up and immediately meeting Brad Pitt, his young replacement, who's just ready to rock and roll and can't wait to tell Morgan Freeman about all the different things that like he's seen. And Morgan doesn't care. He's 7 days from retirement when the movie starts, and he's just looking to wrap this up so that he can go home. And they immediately hit a really gruesome scene. They're brought into a basement apartment where a man it looks like he has eaten himself to death, and he's been dead for a hot minute now. It's just a really grody scene. And while Brad Pitt tries to crack some jokes about it, he's clearly kind of unnerved by it. Of course, Morgan Freeman, not fazed at all. He's a cool cop. A cool cop who's seen everything before. Maybe not this exactly, but he's seen everything before. But he doesn't want anything to do with it. He washes his hands of the situation, says, don't give it to the kid. Give it to somebody else. Anyway, peace, I'm out. But little does he know.
The movie.
Little does he know there's way more to it than that.
But those are spoilers.
But those are spoilers.
There's not a lot that happens in this movie that isn't a spoiler.
That's something that I basically said early on was like, this movie, I really appreciate that it wastes no time getting right into the meat and potatoes of exactly what the plot is, while also somehow managing to have room to breathe, room to characterize all of its characters really well. The sequence of events and pacing are really believable. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, like when Morgan Freeman is suiting up for the day, he grabs his wallet, he grabs his gun, and he grabs his switchblade, which is all like laid out really cleanly for him to like pick up. You know, everything's just like there.
Just out in a row on his dresser.
And we like immediately, you know, a lot about this guy just because of what he is carrying on his person at all times, you know?
Well, and also it kind of follows us through all the way to the end of the day where he lies down in his bed and he starts that like metronome on his nightstand. There's so much like storytelling about who Somerset is as a character just in that like first scene with him.
There's a lot of shorthand about not just the reason he's excited to retire, but also the PTSD he clearly suffers without really like it's not something that the story is about, but it's an important facet of his character to like lend to the themes. The themes of the story would not be as strong without that characterization, but like it's not something that he needs to like look at the camera or even talk to someone else and say I have PTSD. Right. It's like you hear the like distant screams in the backgrounds of certain shots and you're like, this man is traumatized. And he does a great job of hiding it. So it's really nice that we get that like inner look into his character. But yeah, honestly, really, really incredibly done storytelling in this movie. But yeah.
Another thing I guess I should also clarify, Brad Pitt is married to Gwyneth Paltrow in this movie. It's him as Detective Mills and his young wife, whose name I can't remember because I didn't write Tracy. And they just moved into Murder City, USA.
I think it's called
not
Crime
New York.
Town, actually.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Crime Town. Filmed in Los Angeles. Many people think it's Seattle because it's raining all the time. Looks a lot like every dreary, nasty city you've ever seen. Chicago, New York vibes, you know. Whatever seedy city area you want to think it is what it's supposed to be.
I would buy. Go ahead.
it is inspired by New York. The writer said that basically he had the idea to write this from living in New York as a writer for somebody. I think he was working for like a publication firm for
That makes a
a
lot of
couple of
sense.
years, basically, and he lived there and was miserable the entire time, and that's what inspired this movie.
The people that are like the general citizens of the city are more New York than anything else.
Very New York.
I would buy it because of all the rain. If someone said, "Oh, like 90s Seattle," I would buy like that with the grunge and stuff. But the people don't behave like any Seattleites I've ever met. They act like New Yorkers.
I called it New Philcago at some point, and I think that is what it is.
Makes sense. Yeah.
I kind of like that.
But yeah, let me hit y'all with the reviews so that I can get your reviews. We got an 8.6 out of 10 on IMDb, and 83% on Rotten Tomatoes.
Mhm.
A strangely low 65% from Metacritic, and a 4.3 out of 5 on Letterboxd, which makes 2 4.3s in a row.
Huh.
Pretty cool.
How about that?
It's pretty cool.
Makes sense.
Now, I have great news.
What's that?
Twitter Brandon, unfortunately, continues to not make a comeback because all I can find is this is his 5th favorite David Fincher movie, and that after seeing this and Fight Club, he was really confused as to why everyone told him in that era that Brad Pitt was an atrocious actor. Because between this and Fight Club, he found Brad Pitt to be a really, really good actor. And he's like, oh, who's been lying to me like this? But I'm not here to talk about Twitter Brandon. I'm here to talk about everyone's favorite anti-hero of the podcast, the one, the only Iberto, coming in with a 4 out of 4.
Oh,
You
hell
loved
yeah.
this shit. Loved this shit.
All right, Roger.
I got 3 sections that I pulled from it. And also, he considers this to be Morgan Freeman's best performance as of 2011. That is what his opinion was, if not the one of the. So, this was a late review for him. So, obviously, he would have probably reviewed this when it came out.
Yeah.
But this was written by him in 2011. So, plenty of time to also reflect back on Fincher's other work that came out after that, Social
Right.
Network, Zodiac, shit like that.
Because at the time that this came out, Fincher did not have much out at all. He, in terms of like
one
actual
movie, right?
feature-length movies, he had done the 3rd Alien movie, and working with the studio for that one was apparently so terrible it put him off the entire idea of making movies. He didn't even look at another script for a year and a half, and then
That's
the script that
wild.
he looked at was Seven.
I'm glad he looked at it because, well, I'll let Ebert speak. And in my heavily abridged cutting and pasting.
Right.
It's almost always raining in the city. Somerset, Morgan Freeman, the veteran detective, wears a hat and a raincoat. Mills, Brad Pitt, the kid who has just been transferred into the district, walks bareheaded in the rain as if he'll be young forever. Talking about the intro, it says, this grim death sets the tone for David Fincher's Seven, one of the darkest and most merciless films ever made in the Hollywood mainstream. It will rain day after day, and they will investigate death after death. This is as formulaic as an Agatha Christie whodunit, but Seven takes place not in the genteel world of country house murders, but in the lives of 2 cops, one who thinks he's seen it all, and the other who has no idea what he is about to see. Nor is the film about detection. The killer turns himself in when the film still has half an hour to go. Spoiler alert. Sorry, I would have told you.
Yeah, that's a major spoiler there, Roger.
It's more of a character study in which the older man becomes a scholar of depravity and the younger experiences it in a pitiable and personal way.
Aw.
Yeah. I mean, I think that pretty much sums up exactly my feelings towards
Pretty
this
much.
movie as well. I don't really like I'll have more to say at length when we get into the spoiler section,
Absolutely.
but as far as just like my like overall impression of the movie, I think that sums it up really well. I guess, are we ready to give our number reviews?
Hit it.
Okay, I think this is a 9 out of 10 for me.
Mm.
Nothing in it was something that like I would fawn over till the end of time, so I'm not gonna give it a 10 out of 10. But as far as like really well done pacing, storytelling, characterization, music by Howard fucking Shore of Lord of the Rings fame,
Yeah.
and you can tell there are some really orc sounding trumpets going on in
He
there.
does a lot of different stuff in this movie.
Yeah, he does.
This
It's really
shit is
fun.
varied, but you don't notice it while the movie is happening because it always suits what's going on so well.
I noticed it just because I love Howard Shore. So I was
Hard not
I
to.
was keeping an ear out for him.
Yeah, Nina pogged out as soon as his name hit the credits.
I was mostly surprised because he's most famous for like Lord of the Rings. This is the man who wrote the little like Shire theme that everyone knows so well. And he also did music for Seven.
I mean, it's not as though that's the only thing that he's done, but like,
Right. But that's what I'm saying is like this is like he's when people like think about him though, it is very much like
yeah, that is the first thing that you think of for
That
sure.
is because in the catalog of like famous composers, John Williams has done so much shit that like has completely changed pop culture.
Yeah.
But like if you were to pick like a John Williams thing, it'd probably be like the Star Wars theme. He did Indiana Jones and Jurassic Park too, but the Star Wars theme is like it and Darth Vader and all of that. Same thing with Howard Shore. So it's really, really cool. I think everything in this movie works really well together.
When did the first Lord of the Rings movie come out, by the way? Because I think it was like 5 years after this.
2001, 6 years.
Yeah, so 6 years after Seven came out. Ha ha ha.
Yeah, but they started working on the Lord of the Rings movies in like 1998 or some shit. I mean, pre-production went for a ridiculously long period of time on those, but that doesn't quite count for the stuff that we're talking about. Anyways, we're talking about Seven, not Lord of the Rings.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. But yeah, it's so that's Nina's number. Jeff, Emma, which of you would like to go next?
But Noah, what about your number?
Oh, but I'm hosting. I can reserve my
Host can
number
go
till
last.
last.
Yeah, that's
Yeah, hosting go last. Unless hosting
Okay,
decide to
okay.
go first.
always an option as well. Yeah, I'll go next though. I'm giving it a 10. I really like this movie. I feel like from the most recent couple of watches of it, I don't remember how many times I've watched it actually. I've seen it an undetermined amount of times between the first time I watched it and now, and I haven't gotten tired of any piece of it. I like it a lot. I feel like every time I watch it, I just see more little bits in it, and I like it more. I don't think that's bottomless. I think it's gonna like top out eventually, but I fucking love it.
Nice. That's quite good to hear. Noah has like a very interesting face right now.
You use the I'm gonna rate it 5 out of 10 voice, and I'm afraid.
I wouldn't rate it a 5 out of 10. I think I'll say my number and then provide my clarifications. Noah looks so hurt. I'm thinking like a 7 or a 7.5 out of 10.
Oh, that's fine.
That's okay.
A 7 for because
I think it's a very well done movie. But I think this was my first time watching it, and I've just heard so much about it over the years. I think just expectations were kind of like raised to a level that they obviously would not be able to meet. And I called some things pretty early, and I knew certain twists early, and I think it just kind of dulled the experience for me a little bit. So it was missing that like zing factor for me. But it was well done. I totally understand why people like love it as much as they do, but it just didn't like connect with me as much.
I think that's part of why it's a 9, but it's also why it is a 9 for me, because I also knew a lot about like the idea of this movie, and I knew a lot of people I trusted who really liked it, and I knew the pop culture moments kind of surrounding it. But I had never had it like fully spoiled for me. I knew it was a like detective mystery. I could see the kind of end coming as well, especially after the killer was introduced. But obviously the killer is like one of my favorite kinds of characters. We'll get more into that. I'm very predictable. It never ends. It never changes. But like that was for me. I have wanted to watch this movie for a long time, and I was super excited to finally get to watch it. And for me, I don't know that my expectations were too high. I think that I was like, this seems like it's going to be kind of a fun, schlocky detective horror, detective thriller kind of thing. And I think that it and like Silence of the Lambs now live in the same like block in my brain. And the only reason I would ever rate Silence of the Lambs higher is because I've had a crush on Jodie Foster for like my whole life.
Valid.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
She and her wife wore matching pajamas to the Zoom Oscars during the pandemic, and I've literally never recovered. They had a bandana for their dog that matched it too, and I was like,
Nice.
ah.
That's
Anyway.
so cute.
Anyway, yeah, no, I totally get where you're coming from though, Emma, because I think that's part of why it didn't hit a 10 was I was like, yeah, this is pretty much what people had pitched to me, and I liked it, yeah.
Yeah.
I, on the other hand, am a 10. I'm almost the exact same thing that Jeff said. I think I've probably seen this movie 4 times. Because I know Jeff and I watched it together the first time I've seen it. And I've watched it at least once in between, probably twice. And every time, I don't know how this movie manages to get me with the end every single time. And I think it's just that it is a really good... It's barely slow, right? It's barely a slow burn because things do just keep
Things are
happening.
always happening. I feel like the term slow burn doesn't even apply.
Yeah, because Prisoners was a slow burn.
Oh, for sure.
That was a slow burn movie.
Oh, yeah.
And this is much more active, but it's active in the sense of the detectives are spinning their wheels, desperate to try and claw one step ahead. And constantly they are being outpaced by a guy that they never even could have known existed until he decided to let them know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I really like it. It is the secret fourth actor I mentioned earlier is Kevin Spacey, and Kevin Spacey pisses me off so much because he used to be one of my favorite actors, and this movie is a golden highlight of what this man could be. And unfortunately, it turns out he's just a real fucking piece of shit. And it really has tainted my enjoyment of almost every performance of his I've ever seen since then.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah. It's hard.
bums me out a lot. But he is the reason the ending of this movie lands the way as well as it does.
Definitely.
And God, it's mixed feelings on that one. But I really, really love this movie. I really love it a lot.
Yeah, I remember because Kevin Spacey, as noted as a surprise actor, was not in the marketing for this movie.
Yeah,
By his
not
own
in the
Was not
credits
in
in
the
beginning.
opening credits or anything. And it was like supposed to be like a big surprise that he was in the movie.
Right.
And I remember like a couple years ago, maybe somebody posted on Reddit about how they really love this movie and they think their girlfriend would really like it, except their girlfriend hates Kevin Spacey. And so he was like, I decided to show her the movie and not tell her that Kevin Spacey was in it, since it was like a surprise to the audience as well. And maybe by the time we got to that point, she would understand that this is a really good movie and would be okay with it.
No.
And she was not okay with it. She was really mad. And I think it was like a
Yeah.
sort of like, am I the asshole? But yeah.
You know, I'm going to say it. You know, it's not our job, but I'm entering the am I the asshole court right now and declaring, yes, you are, especially and only because if you know your girlfriend hates Kevin Spacey,
Right.
Yeah.
you should not surprise her with
Surprise
a
Kevin
very
Spacey.
emotional Kevin Spacey role.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, like this is the moment where you're like, okay, I don't want to spoil the movie for you, but this is a really good movie, but Kevin Spacey is in it.
Yeah, and then hope that she gives it a chance anyway, because like there are certain movies that have actors that I don't really like. Previously, Brad Pitt was one of those actors where and Leonardo DiCaprio has kind of become one of those actors over time. Where if they're in a movie, it kind of takes a really good pitch to get me to watch that movie in spite of them. Brad Pitt, he's also not a great person, but I have kind of gotten over my Brad Pitt hate as of recent, and I will watch movies with him in it with almost no second thought. Part of the reason I'm reading Killers of the Flower Moon is because I need to get over myself so I can enjoy the movie, but Leonardo DiCaprio playing a main character is driving me insane.
Yeah.
So I totally, if someone were like, hey, watch this movie and didn't tell me Leonardo DiCaprio was in it, I'd be like...
Especially for like, what is it, like a 3.5 hour movie? It's what it's like currently.
Oh, God.
Does.
At least Kevin Spacey's only in the last half hour of this.
Right,
Yeah.
and not like a main character. He is still very important to the plot. I can't wait to talk about that later. But yeah, no, that's hilarious that
Yeah.
she was like that. Oh, poor girlie.
Yikes.
I wouldn't have blamed I wouldn't have blamed her for breaking up with him if that was her like last straw. But I'm a very much the
Just
like
'cause it feels
divorce
symptomatic
him.
of larger problems, right?
Right? Yeah.
Well, besides Kevin Spacey, what other content warnings would we have for this movie?
I was about to say, Kevin Spacey, he's a big obvious one.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
not obvious, actually, because there are actually, in the Ebert article, he does not name Spacey because he felt that because it was a surprise to audiences, even though in the 16 years that followed, you probably knew, he did not want to spoil it.
Yeah.
And I respect that. But, Kevin Spacey jump scare. But we got a few other things too. And I'm going to open up with the biggest one right away, which is gore.
Yeah.
This movie, like I talked about the dead man in the beginning, he's a really disgusting dead body. The dead bodies in this movie are really, really nasty to look at. Because, like, go ahead, Jeff.
Well, because the special makeup effects in this movie are done by drumroll Rob Bottin, who you may remember from doing the effects in John Carpenter's The Thing.
Oh,
That makes a whole lot of
Yeah,
sense.
that's why this movie looks as fucking gross as it does.
Okay, so in The Thing, the effects are gross, right? It is wild to me how much nastier great horror effects look when you take a guy that puts the moody, rainy city filter over the movie and suddenly everything looks way grosser because it's not shiny red blood shock anymore.
Right.
It's dead body.
Okay, I'm going to let us get back to the actual content warning in just a second. Right before we all got onto this call to start recording, Emma knows this, I was reading about film development techniques because it's topical to this movie. The reason this movie looks the way that it does is they used what's called a bleach bypass process, which basically is just skipping over one of the usual steps. From what I understand, it's just skipping over one of the usual steps in developing your film. And the general outcome effect of it is more or less that you get like a black and white image sort of like overlaid with the color image. They're kind of just like they're
So
laid
it kind of
over one another.
desaturates a little bit, but not
Right.
really.
And there's like different ways of doing this. You can do like partial bleaching or full like non-bleaching. I believe what this was is it was like only a partial bleaching rather than entirely skipping it. But that's the reason that the colors are the very specific way that they are. You kind of get like, not a ton of saturation on your colors unless they're like the really big, deep ones, and most of your colors are just kind of come across kind of neutral and stuff. But also you get a lot of definition in your darker areas, which means that this movie actually holds up to streaming a lot better than I would expect it to, given how dark it is. One
of the things in Ebert's review he mentions is that there seems to be a suspicious absence of interior lighting in this movie, but he's not complaining about that.
Yeah.
But yeah, so gore is a huge one though.
Yeah.
Horror heavy hitter came in to do it. There's a lot of dead bodies. There are 7 dead bodies in this movie. Well, I think we see 5, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
One of
You
them
see
is
5.
One of them is technically not dead, but like he might as well be.
Whatever. The doctor says he's medically he's legally dead and condemned to hell anyway.
The doctor
He
did
sentences
say that.
him.
Yeah.
Yeah, he prescribes him hell for all eternity. So, Dr. Loomis is in this movie, heads up to everybody.
Yeah.
Catholic Dr. Loomis. But we got stuff other than gore in the movie, though. The name 7 is 7 deadly sins. That's what the murders through the movie are referencing. So we got a lot of religious imagery in this movie. If you like me growing up are one of those people that's going to be like, that's not what the Bible said actually about that. It's movie religion. And it's Dante's Inferno religion.
Yeah, the Bible is hardly
Catholic
mentioned.
fanfic.
They get into Dante,
couple...
they get into Canterbury Tales, they get into a bunch of stuff. They don't really get into the Bible.
Yeah, it is surrounding the Christian mythos religious conversation,
and it's not
actually religion.
It's not the pretty gothic like religious imagery either. This is like gritty, like it references a lot of the stuff you associate with like pretty gothic religious imagery, but it really focuses on being kind of gritty. They also misquoted something at some point, and I was like, that completely doesn't that's wrong.
Oh,
that's...
the killer quotes something, he misquotes something, and Nina points out to me it's actually really funny that he quotes that because the original meaning of the quote is the opposite.
Oh.
Yeah, he like cuts off the end of a quote from something that would have contextualized it differently, and I was like, I think it's intentional, and it says something about John Doe as a killer, that he chooses not to finish the quote or not to start it where it needs to be started, or however he does it wrong. But yeah,
he's kind of like picking and choosing from his own reference material. Nice.
But yeah, there's a lot of religious stuff in this movie. But honestly, and this you don't have to take this seriously from me. I did not find it triggering at all. And usually when I find religious imagery triggering, it's more of like a I don't know how to say this, but like positive. Like I get really obsessed with stuff that has a specific type of religious imagery, like Apostle and Midnight Mass.
Yeah,
where it's triggering, but in a like healing way. This was not healing. It wasn't even like it didn't even hit any of the buttons.
This isn't a familiar kind of Christianity. No,
it's not. No,
it's Catholic fanfic, The Murderer.
Yeah.
Anyway, we got other stuff in here too, though. We got a couple of uses of the R and F slur. I think they're all from Brad Pitt.
It's all from Brad Pitt, yeah.
The 90s.
We do have a penis in this movie. Don't get excited. It is a dead penis.
And it's very brief.
Very brief. We also have a knife penis. There is a sexual assault not shown scene, but it is a murder scene that involves the knife penis. It
is described a little bit.
It is described a little bit. And there's also, tying into that, negative depiction of sex work, which also, this happens in the big, like, there's an ending monologue from John Doe, played by Kevin Spacey, which including the negative depiction of that, a lot of fat phobia, like, very, like, hateful, spiteful stuff.
It's the kind of thing where it is like, it kind of speaks to why the killer is so wrong, is because he views people who are, I would include, the only reason I wouldn't include one of the characters who is a victim in that he's like an addict, he also is a predator. So I'm not going to like fully include him in this like kind of loop, but a lot of the people that the villain kind of villainizes in his own like thought processes are marginalized or victims of
guy
this
who
society.
is just fat and person who is super insecure are held on the same level as drug dealing pedophile.
Yes. Yeah.
And he thinks that those three people are exactly as bad as each other.
Yeah, he's like, oh, a woman who was able to use sexist society in her favor and knows that society would no longer favor her if she wasn't beautiful. He's like, that's a sin. Get fucked. So yeah, I love that kind of monologue because it really shows how like fucked up his like inner sense of justice is. But yeah, that does lead to a lot of insensitive things being said about a lot of marginalized groups all in one go. So just be aware of that.
Really important to the final arc of the movie. Actually does tie the entire movie together. Yeah. So let's get in the spoiler section.
Yeah.
No, hold on.
Oh
Noah.
no! Oh my God! I'm okay. Okay. It's been a while, but let me defend myself briefly here. I reorganized my notes, so instead of having a list on the top where I will like keep going back up to the top of the list and ticking through it, I reorganized so that I have every step planned out so that I can just keep scrolling through, and I left out asking Emma with some sort of witty line. So Emma, how scary is it to be bypassed again and again and again and again?
10 out of 10. 10 out of 10 scary.
Rest in peace.
For my fellow co-hosts to pretend that I don't even matter.
So true. I say that explicitly, actually. It's in the text.
Yeah, all the time. But this movie scary rating, I wouldn't say this movie is scary. It's more just gross. So like a gross rating, I would give the like 5 or a 6, but like it's also just a very dark and kind of depressing movie. And so it's just very like heavy and dreary. And that also kind of sticks with you.
It does. Sticks to your bones.
Sticks to your bones. And now, Noah, you can do your spoiler summary that you were so excited to do.
As I sprint past Emma like a truck not picking you up at the bus stop.
Wait, a truck?
Sprint also. There's a lot of things wrong with this sentence. Spoilers now. There's another murder. And this murder is much more overt. Pride has been written in blood on the floor, and Morgan Freeman's...
Greed.
Greed has been written in blood on the floor.
I'll cut that.
I'm sorry. Thank you, Editor Jeff, for fixing my faux pas.
It's a good thing nobody will
Greed
know
has
about
been written. Thank God no one will notice that I said pride instead of greed. Cut this too. Greed has been written in blood on the floor. And Morgan Freeman looks at this and he's like, well, you know, this is very biblical, if you will. And he spends his entire evening in a fucking library flipping through the books that we have previously mentioned, Canterbury Tales, Dante's Inferno, all that stuff, pulling up all the shit he can on the 7 deadly sins and leaves it in a little fucking envelope of check out this shit that he hands to Brad Pitt
He even
and walks
prints out
away, kind of thing.
like a chart for him with like a map of purgatory and shit. Like,
yeah, he like it's a very like another one of the moments. I'm sorry, I'm detouring again. The movie just moves and it keeps going, but it takes scenes like this where it like takes a moment to breathe and let us see that this is what Morgan Freeman's character of Somerset is. He's a guy who is a very well-versed in a lot of things type of person, and he sees greed and he's like, I know what to do with that. So Brad's having none of it. He gets the Cliff Notes immediately because he is not going to read all of these books.
well, he does attempt to briefly, and we see him just kind of rage quit the Divine Comedy in his car.
Not funny at all, if you can believe it. But another murder ends up showing up, and Morgan Freeman's like, okay, I can't ditch this dude alone with these two clearly connected murders, because they have also found evidence that the first man is also connected to this because they found gluttony written in grease on the wall in the back of his fridge.
Dun, dun, dun.
As they are going through the steps of solving these murders, what is it? It's a gluttony. It is greed. What comes next?
I mean, I don't. What order are they in the movie? Is it sloth next?
Oh,
yeah,
it is
it's
sloth.
sloth
Like,
after
Nina
that.
very smartly said, "What if I look up the 7
The 7
wiki?"
deadlies.
Yeah, you're missing some. Yeah, you're missing some fun facts in your summary.
Yeah, you're
here,
right.
so-
I'll just read the wiki for this because it's going to summarize it better than I will. I didn't have time to write my summary. I got stuck at work.
Boo, you suck.
Okay, that's what Wikipedia's for.
Exactly. It's I'm sourcing from Wikipedia. Source Wikipedia. In an unnamed city overcome with violent crime. Sorry.
It's Crime Town. God,
I'm
this is
loving
so
these
It's Crime
details.
Disillusioned police detective William Somerset is 1 week from retirement. He's partnered with David Mills, a short-tempered, idealistic detective who recently relocated to the city with his wife, Tracy. On Monday, Somerset and Mills investigate an obese man who was forced to eat until his stomach burst, killing him. The detectives find the word gluttony written on a wall. Somerset, considering the case too extreme for his last investigation, asked to be reassigned to another case, but his request is denied. The following day, another victim, who had been forced to cut 1 pound (0.45 kilograms) of flesh from his body, is found. The crime scene is marked greed, not pride.
That's the one that there was a misquote from it. So I'll bring that up when we get to talking later. If someone would remind me.
Cool.
Clues at the greed scene lead Somerset and Mills to the sloth victim, a drug-dealing pederast who they find emaciated and restrained to a bed.
Now,
Photographs reveal the victim was restrained for exactly 1 year.
that is skipping over so much of what makes that sequence the way that it is, right?
I mean,
Clues at the scene. Like they have to like look at the picture of the wife and then talk to the wife and then she tells them about the painting that's upside down and then they take it off of the wall and then they find all the the handprints and stuff spelling out words on the wall under it. And
I mean, we only have so much time. They only
clues
have
at
so
the
much
scene
time.
lead them to the next scene. Okay.
Yeah, I'm sorry. The sloth victim's severed hand was used to put fingerprints on the wall that spelled "help me" when dusted.
Yeah.
And that's how they found him.
And he's been tied to a bed for a year.
And this is when Somerset really lays down the fact that this is definitely the 7 deadly sins. During this moment, Brad Pitt gets a photo taken of him by a nosy reporter. I'm sure that won't come back.
The way the reporter yells at him is fucking hilarious, too.
It's really great. Very big I'm walking here energy.
Majorly.
Let's see. Now, one of the things that this Wikipedia article really is not handling well is the fact that Mills and Somerset don't like each other. They really actually hate each other.
They don't get along
But
at all.
Tracy decides to invite Somerset over to have supper with her and her husband. And, quote, helping the detectives overcome their mutual hostility. Who would have known a little bit of alcohol and some food would help that?
Wow.
However, Tracy has a secret. She meets privately with Somerset because she doesn't have any friends in town and she doesn't know who to talk to because she hates this place. And she just found out that she is pregnant. And she does not think that the city is a safe place to raise a child. Somerset immediately is like, hey, I'm not the one to talk to about this, but if you decide to keep the kid, keep the kid. But if you decide not to, do not tell your husband. He will never recover from that. Source, dude, just trust me.
Source, it literally happened to him, I believe,
Yeah.
is
He tells
actually
a
the
whole story
source.
about it and stuff.
Yeah, he tells a whole story about it. A side comment from Mills ends up inspiring Somerset to reach out to his FBI contact to track and see who has been renting out copies of these books that he also has been looking at. And that leads them to the apartment of John Doe, in which I love this scene so much because we see John Doe open fire immediately because he realized what's happening. And Brad Pitt, as Mills, he just returns fire. He's not thinking of the fact that this is a
It's an apartment building that they're
apartment.
in. Yeah. People
And
live
he's
there.
like running through the place, gun out, ready to fucking go. And then he gets taken down real hard by John Doe because he was being careless. He gets his face smashed in and would have been killed if Somerset did not show up at the last second and like cause Doe to leave.
I have questions about that within the plot of the movie, which is...
Well, he might not have killed him.
That's-
He might have just been
Yeah,
enjoying the moment of power over him.
Stuff he says later suggests that he always intended to let him go.
Mm-hmm.
I got some fun facts about that chase sequence, though.
I'm excited for it.
Yeah.
Let's see. When they decide to, and by they I mean Mills decides to pay someone to lie and say, "Oh yeah, we saw him going in and out with suspicious murder shit all the time, and that's why we called the police."
He was being creepy when the murders were happening.
In fact, there was a murder right over there.
God, I love her. I love her so much. She's actually my favorite character in the movie.
But they managed to make their way into the building, and they find a whole lot of shit, including photographs and a receipt that lead them toward the lust victim.
Dun, dun, dun,
The
dun.
receipt to, what is it, like Wild Bill's
Leather Shop.
Mm-hmm. Where the guy's like, yeah, I thought this was just some like freaky little like art showpiece. I didn't think anyone would use it. Who the fuck would do that? But people wear this stuff for art stuff all the time. And it is...
This is the scene that was like, okay, maybe this is Seattle.
I love the part where he's like, they're like acting shocked by it, and he's like, I've made way weirder stuff than this.
Yeah, he's literally just like, nah, man, this is just another Tuesday for me. Another bladed penis strap on.
I think
Okay.
it's
Wait, do
really
you not
interesting
have one of those?
because stuff like this is only shocking if you think of what horrible things it could be used for in that way.
Yep.
When usually it's the intended purpose is like the Lil Nas X like music video. It's the opposite of that. It's to critique that kind of imagery and thought process. So it's interesting in this movie that Noah, please continue.
Cannibal Corpse voice fucked with a knife.
Yeah, yeah. That wasn't a Cannibal Corpse voice at all, but it works.
Fucked with a knife.
Is that what Cannibal Corpse sounds like?
I'm
Yeah,
not
that's what
yelling
Cannibal
right
Corpse
now.
sounds like, yeah.
I'll take your word for it.
Yeah, so that's what happens next. John Doe forces a man at gunpoint to murder a prostitute with the penis knife.
Yeah.
It's a rough scene.
Once again, you
And-
do not see anything. Normally, you see kill wounds and stuff sometimes in this movie, even. You don't see this one.
Mm-hmm.
You don't even
And
see the knife penis directly.
There's a...
Ever.
You see a picture of
You
the
see a
knife.
Yeah, you
picture
see a
of it.
picture and that's
Yeah.
it. You don't see it on the guy. You don't see anything
You
like
see
that.
it
And
on
I
the guy
would
like under a sheet that they're covering it up with, but
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
And I would like to shout this movie out as one of those movies that has assault content in it and doesn't show it, because there is a sleazier director who would have flashes of the murder happening as he's recounting the story, and instead we get an actually incredibly like
Veiled.
jittery monologue
Mhm.
by the guy talking about what happened in his like
Yeah.
police confession booth. And I'm sure Jeff has some trivia about that
I
one.
most certainly do. He intentionally hyperventilated himself for
Mhm.
that scene.
And
And he
hyperventilating
stayed
and-
awake for 2 days.
Yeah,
He stayed
and
up
which
all
is why
night
he
for
looked
it,
like
but
fucking
then
shit.
they ended up having to delay the shooting for the next day. So he said, okay, I'll just stay up another night.
Bestie.
And
yeah.
he delivered one of the most realistic portrayals in the movie, almost.
Man's
right?
very
Like,
clearly not okay.
he's clearly having a bad time.
Not as bad of a time as the
Immediately after
lady.
this,
She's dead.
The
She's
pride
dead.
victim is found. John Doe mutilated her face, glued a mirror to one hand, and he also sewed it back up and bandaged it so that it would be okay, right? Okay, quotation marks. And then he tells her, well, you can either call the cops. Oh, not a mirror. I'm sorry. A phone in one hand. He's like, you can call the cops and be rescued and be ugly forever. Or you can take
Oh,
these
no.
sleeping pills and die. And because, quote, she was so ugly inside, she couldn't bear to be ugly on the outside, she opted out. Definitely no other factors at play, like the fact that she was just attacked in her home and was definitely not in a good place, Whatever, John Doe. You're
Yeah.
definitely a smart critiquing man.
Yeah, wow. He's such anyway,
It
I
says a
can't wait
lot
to
about
talk about
society,
him.
you know? I mean,
I
Really
cannot
does.
wait
He
to
said
talk about him.
He cut off her nose.
entirely,
right?
yeah.
Yeah, to
Mhm.
spite her face, as you do.
Ugh, this man. I can't wait to talk about this.
Somerset is
As
so fun.
Mills and Somerset get back to the police station after investigating the Pride murder scene, John Doe arrives right outside, who follows them in saying, detective, detective, and they're ignoring him because, you know, they're busy trying to solve a murder. And he turns himself in, and no one knows what's going on. Everyone's having a bad time. John Doe's just like, well, there are 2 other victims, and if you take me there, just Somerset and Mills and me, I will take them to the last 2 bodies. And otherwise, you'll never find them. So they end up finally agreeing to go with him. They go out into the middle of the desert as he does his big monologue about how he is God's chosen instrument to show the world that it's actually the world sucks. About the ubiquity of and apathy toward sin. He's the messenger of that. He has no remorse for his victims, and he is of the opinion that the shocking nature of his murders will force everyone to pay attention and remember him. Now, Mills, over the course of this movie, Somerset is a very reserved opinion toward the man. He makes sure not to like show his hand too heavily. Mills, on the other hand, you know, he's young, he's brash, he doesn't give a shit.
Mills may
And
have heard the word subtlety once, but he didn't know what it meant.
And he's like, no, I take coffee, thanks.
Yeah.
Because he drops nothing but contempt on John Doe, saying, yeah, you think you're special? Give it 2 weeks and no one will remember who you are. You'll be totally forgotten. No one will ever know you. And then they get to the spot, and a delivery van shows up and meets them there, and they hand Somerset a box. And this is the part that everyone's probably seen, is the what's in the box.
What's in the box?
Which, yeah.
I didn't know that you know by that point what's in the box.
There's no
was under the
guessing at
impression
all,
that
yeah.
the audience doesn't. I was under the impression that the audience doesn't know, but you know what's in the box.
No, you know what's in the
I-
box, and
I thought that too, but I had guessed what was in the box.
You're supposed to,
Like,
really.
pretty early in
yeah.
the movie. Yeah.
Oh no, literally the moment that we meet Tracy, I was like, this bitch is dead. I'm sorry, babe, you are dead.
speaking of, it is Tracy's head in a box,
Wah, wah.
because the final murders of the movie is John Doe saying, I was envious of your perfect little life, and so I decided to take myself a souvenir from it, and I took your wife's head. And then his by doing that, he wanted to make Mills embody wrath and murder him back, which he does.
I love
And
it. I love it.
And he shoots him 6
That's
times.
the end of the movie. The end of the movie is everything crashing down like that, and Mills getting taken away in the back of a police cruiser, and Somerset talking with the chief of police, saying, well, I'll be around, and leaving. And people thought the ending of this movie was so miserable and bleak that they add in this Hemingway quote that says exactly what the movie idea is, if you were paying attention to the movie.
Yeah, I was.
Which is
Okay,
sorry.
go
The world is a fine place and worth fighting for. I agree with the second part, which is a big change of his attitude earlier in the movie, where he's like, the world sucks and it's always gonna suck, and then the end of the movie is him saying the world is worth fighting for even though it sucks.
Yeah, it's so good because I told Noah this, like, I understand why the quote was added, but to me, the fact that he's saying he'll be around at the end of the movie is such a departure from his attitude
Yeah.
for the whole movie, that it really shows that, like, he feels that his, like, constant holding himself back from connecting to Mills and to Tracy probably contributed to where things ended up. And he's realized that he does have an impact and he does have an ability to make things better, and that he probably failed a little bit this time, and that he has realized that he doesn't want to let that happen again, and he will be available. He'll be more available than he was planning on being after this case was over.
Oh, I perceived it a lot less hopeful than that.
Yeah. Because
Well,
I think with the way that like their relationship evolves over the course of the movie,
Right.
and the way that he pleads with Mills in the final scene, it feels to me like specifically something about Mills and Tracy's relationship changed fundamentally the way that he viewed his role in the world and in other people's lives.
see, first of all, the Hemingway quote getting added to the end was a decision that actually that both Morgan Freeman and David Fincher have said that they don't care for. They wish that it had ended without that. They liked it ending a little bit more bluntly. But also the way that I perceived Somerset's later lines there is throughout the movie, he's always talking about how he's leaving, and everyone's like, I can't believe you're leaving. And then like we get that moment where like the chief comes to bring him the like extra evidence from the gluttony scene, right? And the like precinct janitor is scraping Somerset's name off of his office door. And Somerset, in the middle of talking to the chief, looks at the janitor and says, "Can you not do that, please? Stop scraping my door. Stop scraping my name off of the door." And between that and a few other things that he says over the course of the length of the movie, and then that late line where he says, "I'll be around," the way I perceived it was like, Somerset's real fucking tired of being a cop, but he doesn't know anything else at this point.
I get it. I read it a lot more hopeful,
Right,
specifically because realizing that he was the only person in these two people's lives that they could talk to, and that he was the only person who had a chance to influence the way that this could have gone, and because he was so worried about maintaining his own peace and retiring and keeping himself alive, he may have inadvertently contributed to where the two of them ended up.
And I see that for sure.
Yeah, like to me that like final moment was a moment of like, oh, especially with combined with the Hemingway quote, but even if that hadn't been there, just specifically in the final scene where he is like pleading with Mills, I think in his mind, especially with like the screams that he hears and the way that he does want to get away from being a cop, like to me it feels like another moment of like, damn, in his head, I feel like there's a route that's playing out of, if I had said something different, if I had put in more effort, if I hadn't held myself back, would he have listened to me in that moment? Would I have given Tracy different advice, and maybe she would have told him about the baby, and that would have and that would have changed something in that final scene when Doe is like, "Oh, and you didn't know about the baby." Like there's so much that like, because me as an audience member, I can wonder, like, this is one of those movies that I can see watching in the future and like knowing where it's going, but it's like that Orpheus and Eurydice thing where you're like, I don't know if that's the guy's name, but like the Greek myth where the guy turns around, his wife like has to go back to hell, like where you always kind of hope that this time he won't look back. That's how I feel about this movie going forward. Is like, man, unlike Annihilation where I'm always like, oh, I love how this movie ends, and I look forward to the character beats and the story arcs every time. With this one, it's gonna be like, oh, maybe this time Somerset will reach out more.
Maybe he can be happy. No.
Maybe this time they'll
maybe if I watch the movie enough, something good will happen.
That's I do love that specific kind of story, and this movie does it really well.
Yeah.
But yeah, when we were watching the ending of this movie, obviously I knew what was happening because I've seen it before. And Nina knew what was happening because it's a good movie that telegraphs what's happening. And as you realize it, if you've managed to fully buy in at that point, you're like, oh no,
The dread
Oh,
builds
no.
really well.
Oh, no.
Especially because there's a full half hour from the moment that you kind of realize what's going to happen. The moment John Doe turns himself in,
Covered in blood,
covered
by the
in
way.
blood, you kind of know which two sins are left, and you know where this is fucking going. My only thought is I thought maybe he was going to draw Somerset in more. I didn't, like, on my first watch realize how much of like a bystander to this entire sequence of events Somerset is.
Yeah, Somerset gets to be the audience stand-in in begging Mills to please don't do that. Please don't do that. Please
Yeah.
don't do
The
that.
whole
Please
movie,
don't do that.
yeah.
I love that. Yeah, no. So that's the only thing that I wasn't sure about, but like because it like cues you up for a really awful ending, the 30 minutes from the end, the sense of tension is really, really good.
Yeah. Well, that's kind of the big thing about the movie, though, is also like by the time you learn anything about anything, it's already too late to do anything about it, right? And this is
Yes.
a big thing that David Fincher said he liked about the script when it came to the ending as well. Is I actually read this kind of lengthy quote from him where he was talking about the scene with the head in the box because the studio tried really hard to get them not to do that. There was
Cowards.
actually it's worth noting there was a shit ton of attempted studio interference with this movie, but every time someone would try and pressure Fincher to change something, he would say things like no, and
Get
that would
Fox
be
Studios.
that would be it. Like basically,
I think at the same time, both Brad Pitt and Morgan Freeman were like, if you change anything about the ending, we're leaving.
Yeah, both of them basically were saying if this ending gets ruined, we walk. And they, between the two of them, had a little disagreement about the specific way that it should play out. Morgan Freeman actually thought that it should be Somerset who kills John Doe.
Oh, that would have been interesting.
Yeah, he thought.
That
because
would have been interesting.
Yeah, because then John Doe doesn't win, and Somerset doesn't go to prison, and like
or
he
well,
feels as
Mills
though
doesn't go to
he's-
prison.
Or Mills, sorry, yeah. But and Somerset feels as though he's ending his career like doing something
I
that
feel
really
like-
makes a difference. But Brad
I feel like
Pitt
that
said,
supports my read on the end.
right? But then Brad Pitt said, well, yeah, but like Mills has to be the one to do it because Mills isn't the guy who does the smart thing. He's the guy who follows his
So
feelings
true.
and goes with the act of passion and kills the guy who kills his wife. But Fincher was talking about how much he loved that scene because by the time it happens, Tracy's already been dead for hours. There's no bullshit chase across the city. There's no race against the clock or something. There's no defeating anything. You've already lost. And the only decision Mills has to make is, are you going to make sure that the man who did this goes to prison, or are you going to fucking kill him?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I almost like can't even blame him for it. I have so much to say about John Doe.
There's a lot to say about everything in the movie, right? Like,
I love a movie or a story in general, where the villain wins, whether they're right or wrong, where the story has a satisfying conclusion, but the villain doesn't lose.
yeah.
There are some Agatha Christie murders that I can put out there that I won't say which because they're somehow the public conscious has decided to collectively keep the endings of certain Agatha Christie stories secret.
I love that.
Which I appreciate. But there are some like that where like those are some of the like best stories are the ones where like you're faced with this choice and it's a lose-lose situation and like playing into the killer's hands is not necessarily like the least satisfying ending.
Yeah.
And I love that.
I love the
Real quick, oh, go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say I like the organization of our cast as well, in a real particular way that like I don't normally notice in movies. They kind of form a little bit of a trinity, don't they? Mills and Somerset are Somerset and Mills respectively are kind of positioned as the father and the son. And I feel like
Absolutely.
you could kind of include Tracy in there as the neglected and ill understood Holy Spirit, and then we have our great accuser, our adversary, our Satan, Kevin Spacey.
So true.
And they're like the only characters that we get any kind of actual depth from. We don't get much of anything from the other people. They're all just talking faces.
And I love that. Because it's all we need.
Yeah.
The rest of the city is kind of a Greek chorus of supporting the themes of the main characters' journeys as well as the themes of the story overall.
Yeah.
And speaking of, I'd love to talk about The Merchant of Venice really quick.
Okay. I'm not familiar with it at all.
So The Merchant of Venice is a Shakespeare story. And the general plot is this is one of those stories that plays with the anti-Semitism of the era in a way that as a modern audience it's important to be critical of. So I'm going to preface this with that. But the story is about this this Jewish man who I believe is being this is very like my modernized understanding of it, being sued basically for one reason or another, and the prosecutor is basically asking for a pound of flesh, and his daughters disguise themselves as men to be his defense attorneys basically, and their eventual response is, okay, you can have a pound of flesh, but only flesh, no bone, no sinew, and most importantly, and this is what John Doe cuts off, no blood.
Oh.
And the prosecutor realizes immediately that he's fucked. He wasn't specific enough, and now he cannot have his due, even as it's been promised to him, because there is no way to take a pound of flesh without drawing blood.
Right.
So obviously in the context of this movie, that quote is completely misused because there is so much blood at the scene of this crime.
Yeah.
Everywhere. And it is such a great indicator. And I told Noah this early on. I'm like, I'm not frustrated by this misquote because I can see where this is going. John Doe consistently misquotes and misuses like the words of these writers that he's quoting and using as inspiration to twist them to support his own personal worldview and biases as someone who is just disgusted by the world around him.
Maybe I was wrong earlier. This is a familiar kind of Christianity.
But in a very interesting way, right? Like,
yeah. It's just aimed a slightly different direction ultimately.
Yeah. So that was like a really fun moment for me because I love it when I get to pick up on something and be like, I feel like that was made just for me as the person who knows that reference.
That's a really cool thing to catch. I never would have.
Yeah. I also, and with that in mind, I love the parallels because when we read John Doe's notebook and he's talking about how he was on the train or something, the bus, and this like man was talking to him, and John Doe just like pukes all over the place because he is so just disgusted by normal fucking people. I love that. This is like holding him up next to Somerset, who like the parallels are so strong of two people who just have no faith in humanity. But for very different reasons, because Somerset has very much seen the worst of the worst in his position versus John Doe, who just seems to find everyone, even just normal people, even people who Somerset would probably be like, okay, I can find a little bit of faith in humanity through you. He's like, nope.
Not good enough.
Gross,
repulsive.
disgusting, repulsive, hate it. Yeah, it's a really, the cast is exactly who they need to be for this story to come together.
That last piece of analysis of John Doe's character actually goes directly to what the writer was thinking when he came up with the whole thing. It was literally just looking at the regular ass shit that happens on street corners every single day and thinking, what if a person was just really obsessive and focused in on this really, really hard? What kind of fucking psycho would they turn into? What specific flavor of horrible, evil, twisted shit would they turn out if this was what they were
they hyper
fixated
focused on this specifically?
Yeah.
So I would like to draw a comparison between three things. So firstly, this. Secondly, American Horror Story Hotel.
Oh no.
Hey,
Actually,
let's
just
go.
the intro of American Horror Story actually
was that one.
So first of all, the introduction during this movie, the intro sequence plays, which plays a remix of Closer by Nine Inch Nails.
Yeah.
And has a bunch of like creepy shit. And I'm like, American Horror Story totally ripped this shit off. Good job, American Horror Story. And then secondly, so in Hotel, there is a 7 deadly sins killer
Oh.
throughout the entire season. It's one of the weaker plot points in this season.
Aw.
American Horror Story does this thing where it follows several different kind of cliches at the same time. And one of the plot points in this one is like, oh, it's 7 again. It does not have nearly as compelling of a backstory for its version.
I would imagine not.
Nothing. It's American Horror Story, so nothing actually like comes together coherently for this character at all. God. So like having watched that, I was coming into this and I was like, oh, they did it differently, but like I know what a 7 deadly sins killer kind of looks like, especially like the way that they like use it to punish people that they perceive as having committed these sins. But this guy's reasoning is so much more compelling because like
He's just looking at society.
So the thing is like I want to be sensitive because it's like one of those things where in a lot of like 90s to like even current day, like 2015 is when Split came out or whatever, we have a really bad tendency as a society of demonizing people who have mental illnesses and who probably need help. I think this is one of those ones where they don't specify anything specific to do with John Doe. So to specifically label him in any way would be something that I'd be doing on my own, and I wouldn't like to do that. But I will say that, like, when you talk about how the writer is like, oh, how would, like, what kind of person would fixate on this? Like, what specific kind of, like, deal would you have to, like, focus, like what kind of person would focus on this specifically and carry it out.
Right.
That's something that like also is another thing that connected directly to the Batman. Rolling right from that into the Batman.
Yeah.
Because like that's another movie that this one specifically reminded me of, and that's something that people talk about with Batman villains specifically a lot, is it feels like these people are always kind of targeted as people who are like who need help. And I like how in the Batman they draw such a good parallel of like Bruce and the Riddler both very much need help, and are parallels to each other the same way that like Somerset and John Doe are, but like flipped, where they're both like, neither of them are very stoic. Neither of them are like, both of them are very sure of what they're doing in a very different way. And it was fun to watch this after having watched the Batman and having no idea what was going on, and seeing the difference in like this like hot-headed emotional killer versus this very cold, self-assured killer. I don't know. I like how you can see this film's marks on pop culture, but how people have taken away different things. American Horror Story just took away, wouldn't it be fucked up if someone used the 7 deadly sins as a blueprint for killings? And then the Batman was like, hey, Batman's supposed to be a detective. What if we did 7 again, but played specifically off of these two characters' like backstories in a way that makes a lot of sense for this world specifically. And I really enjoy knowing that that's probably a part of what was going on, because there's so many like thematic and tonal like similarities between the Batman and 7 that it's like impossible to ignore it. Anyway, sorry, that's my long rambly rant. I'm done. I'm tired.
Can I complain about the 7 deadly sins?
Please,
Sure.
I am so ready for that.
One of my big complaints about this movie, and maybe you all can provide better context for me, or maybe I just missed something. But in this movie, the first 2 murders happen, which are greed and gluttony. And immediately they're like, oh, we need to start reading the Canterbury Tales and theological writings of St. Thomas Aquinas and all this stuff so we can understand the 7 deadly sins. And I understand, like, from a movie making perspective of wanting to put those references into a movie so that you can, like, refer to them from, like, a meta standpoint or in, like, little ways throughout the storytelling. I'm glad both of you are raising your hand already, but from an audience perspective, and maybe it's just because, like, since then I've been so exposed to the 7 deadly sins as a concept through media, but even back then I was like, I feel like the 7 deadly sins were very, like, a very common concept where when like references to them are made in, like, a series of murders or something, it seems like a leap for the detectives to be like, oh, we got to get, like, really into the theology of all of this stuff immediately to get into the head of our killer, who obviously must be, like, this super intellectual guy, because he's referencing this really obscure thing or these really obscure concepts. And I was like, that seems weird, but maybe I missed something, and I'm gonna throw it to Noah and Nina, who have had their hands raised.
All right, so my theory on that is to show that Somerset is, to an extent, a bit of a know-it-all. Because, yeah, the writing is quite literally on the wall. It's very there for anyone to see, but he thinks about things to show, like, the difference between him and Brad Pitt, because Mills is going to look at that and be like, oh, yeah, okay, some wacko who's crazy and insane is doing this, which he continually is told by Somerset, don't write him off as some, like, random guy.
This is a huge
You got to
running
take
thread
this
through the movie,
seriously.
yeah.
And I think that is, while that is kind of like a movie reason to do it, I think that's, like, a primary reason to do it, is to be like, no, this is a guy who's taking... The reason he's a good detective is because he meets criminals where they are and tries to cut ahead of them that way.
It's more characterization of Somerset than it is. And the other thing is that it doesn't help. Neither, because Mills and Somerset both kind of end up, apart from Mills and during the monologue just not giving a shit, it doesn't end up actually helping them catch the killer at all. It just gives them a general idea of what's going to come next, but it literally does not help them catch John Doe at all. John Doe does not get caught because they understand him or they've done this research or anything. He turns himself in. He gets to do literally his whole plan start to finish with like minimal hiccups. So I don't think that I think it was Somerset kind of being a know-it-all, and trying to in giving Mills all of this information, trying to coach Mills and get him to think more like Somerset thinks, more than anything else. Also, I will say, the only times I've really heard of the 7 deadly sins is from this, and then things that have come out after this. I'm not sure if I've ever seen pop culture really reference the 7 deadly sins.
I would hazard a guess that this movie probably is the reason that pop culture does reference the 7 deadly sins in general.
I just feel like I heard it in church constantly.
Yeah, I'm
okay,
I'm
but
pretty
that
sure it was
that's
a fairly
because
well-known thing before
that's that thing
I
is
would like to put a light pin in the fact that we all grew up in church.
that
and
was what I was about to say
I
is
know.
that because I reference shit. I'm gonna this is not a call out. I will broadly ask Emma's spouse if they know about religious topics that I think are kind of just pop culturally like ubiquitous, and even if you didn't grow up in the church, you might know about. And Piper will go, "No, I have no idea what that is."
Real quick before Jeff, because there's like 7 deadly sins because Japan loves the idea of Catholicism.
Yeah,
They
love
really do.
aesthetic
Evangelion.
Christianity, right?
The aesthetic of Christianity and stuff like that can be seen in like animes and mangas and stuff like that.
yeah.
So on that front, there's even more evidence of this is kind of a ubiquitous thing, but also If I were to ask my coworker Nick if he knew what they were,
He doesn't count.
I don't think he could name all of them.
Nick doesn't count.
But I think Nick is a great example. He's my touchstone of the general masses on things like this.
That is kind of where Piper's at for me too, honestly, at this point, because I literally always expect people to like have some idea of it. And I don't know if Piper would like, if I was like, Piper, you know the 7 deadly sins, how many they'd be able to rattle off. But that's another thing where now
I have faith in you, Piper. I think you could get all 7 of them.
They watched this movie with me,
right?
So they probably
definitely
if I had asked
able to
before.
name them.
Well, and then the other thing is that it is kind of woven into pop culture now. The other place I remember hearing about it was X-Men. So that was before this. This is like 70s X-Men, referenced Inferno a lot because of Nightcrawler. But you know, I don't know if that's like a good touchstone.
Well, Nightcrawler's a Catholic. You know who else probably talked about the 7 deadly sins? Matt Murdock.
Oh, you know,
almost
Mr.
definitely.
Dare of Devils himself. Anyway, Jeff, go ahead.
Well, I mean, for one thing, at least the pop culture 7 deadly sins are like still the correct 7 deadly sins, right? It's not like the way
Full
that
Metal
there's
Alchemist. Sorry,
not
I
the way
forgot
that
about
there's
Full
like
Metal
the fucking like pop culture 4 horsemen of the apocalypse, where everyone thinks that one of them is pestilence for some reason. There's no pestilence horse in the Book of Revelation. Read your goddamn Bible, people.
No, my name's Neil Gaiman and Terry Pratchett, and I say fuck you, actually.
Damn it, no. The Conqueror is the coolest horseman. God, you people. I don't actually think the Conqueror is the coolest horseman. 4 Horsemen fans, please don't start fighting me on the internet. I can't take it.
Also, pestilence is the non-binary, or pollution as they're called. They're the non-binary one in Good Omens, so you can't get rid of them. That's my representation.
It's the 4 horsemen, not the 4 horse them.
Thank you, Jeff, for standing up for America.
So brave, so brave.
Anyways, though, I kind of thought Somerset going to do his 7 deadly sins research was largely more about like thematic stuff about the punishments for the 7 deadly sins and figuring out who prospective victims may be and what might be getting done to them, like to try and get ahead of it in that kind of a way was my assumption.
Me too. It didn't help, but I also agree that was probably what he was trying to do.
I have 2 thoughts. Like, I don't think there's anything bad with them being like, oh, let's look at these books or whatever.
Right.
But I just feel like there should have been a better kicking off point that led them to that.
I
that
thought it was good.
Explicit in the movie. I feel like Somerset could have already known about the 7 deadly sins, seen the connection, and been like, oh, there's going to be more of these murders because these are the other like 7 deadly sins. And then at one of the crime scenes, there's some like quote or reference or something that he picks up on, and he's like, that's from a book. And then they like go and look at the books, and he's like, I've got this FBI contact that can track like library usage for people, so we can see who's been like checking out these books and other suspicious things. I just feel like personally it would have flown a bit better for me. But also, it's weird that they're researching the 7 deadly sins and Somerset told Mills to look at Dante's Purgatory when Inferno is largely the one where you would get a lot of that crunch from the 7 deadly sins.
So, 2 things. Firstly, Inferno and Purgatory, and that's the Divine Comedy as a whole. It's all 3.
Yeah.
So I'm sure he just said, look at the Divine Comedy, and that was where that went. I know that, like, again, we know that Inferno is where that mostly takes place.
It's kind of funny that Mills doesn't.
Well, yeah. So if Mills knew better, he probably would have just gone straight to Inferno. But I'm sure that this leads me directly to my second point. I think it's important that there is no quote that leads Somerset into looking into these books. I think it speaks to Somerset's intelligence and to his detective skills that he knows already kind of which books he would need to look for.
It helps the world-weary detective angle.
Yeah.
Yeah, and he clearly spends a lot of time in this like library area anyway, given his kind of rapport with the security guards and stuff. It seems like this is kind of standard for him is to like do research like this, or even just read texts in general for himself. So to me, I think it's again more characterization. And I think that once he starts looking into these books and making these connections, he's like, why am I doing this? I don't want to be working on this case. I'm going to give it to the other detective. But yeah.
I think actually, and this is the biggest key to the whole thing, he's going to the library and doing all that just to make the packet for Mills because he knows Mills won't know any of this stuff. So not only
Actually,
is it a character
that is a
thing
good
for
point.
Somerset, but it's also this like glaring indictment of Mills and his lack of knowledge and experience and how like just reductive and dismissive and immature he tends to be about everything that he doesn't bother to try and understand.
Yeah, he's like got fucking Mills's number right after meeting him.
He looks at his time,
which
he's
makes
like, no.
which makes the fact that he, again, he holds himself back, and eventually, like, because of that, it plays into Mills's downfall. Because he knows Mills's type so well, there is more he could have done. And I think he knows that, especially after talking to Tracy and realizing what kind of person she is and seeing so much of himself in both of them and their situation. Like,
Yeah.
He's like literally just like in a constant state of, I'm not going to help these two. Maybe I'll help them a little because they're literally going to not succeed ever at all. And the worst possible scenario is going to happen if no one helps them. No one helped me. Oh, but wouldn't it have been nice if someone had? I'm going to do at least the bare minimum that I really wish someone would have done for me. And I feel like it's a constant bouncing back and forth for him. I don't know. I love him as a character. He's really compelling.
Yeah. Emma, does that all work any better for you by any chance?
No.
Bummer. All right. Can't win them all.
Yeah.
So do we want to hear a handful of a little more trivia about various parts of this movie? Because
Absolutely.
I would love to hear about
I've
trivia.
got an absolute ton of it. I'm going to start with casting related stuff. So they were a little worried that Morgan Freeman wouldn't want to take this role, but he was actually the first of the cast to sign on for it. He was not the first considered, though. You want to hear one of the people who turned down the opportunity to be Somerset? Al Pacino.
Yes. That would have been
all
so
right.
fun.
Denzel
I'm
Washington
glad he wasn't. I don't think he
turned
could have
down
done
the role of Mills.
Okay, that would have been awful.
And Val Kilmer turned down the role of John Doe. Gwyneth Paltrow was the first choice for Tracy, but she was not the first person they asked because when David Fincher said that she was the one he wanted, he was told that she probably wouldn't want to be in something this dark. So they asked other people first, and then once they had tried and couldn't find someone who worked for it, they asked her, and she was a little reluctant, but then she did take it.
That's
From
wild.
what I read, she didn't want to do it, but her and Brad Pitt were dating at the time,
Yeah.
and he convinced her.
It seems like Brad Pitt and fucking Morgan Freeman really believed
They seem
in
to
this
care
movie.
about this movie.
They were super
Yeah.
into it from everything that I read. I just mentioned Mills ties that he wears all the time. Brad Pitt bought all of those.
his rack. Oh my god.
His rack of
He bought
pre-tied
all
His
of
ties.
them
rack of
personally
pre-tied
because-
ties.
Right. Because he felt that it was important to the character that Mills have bad fashion sense. And goddamn,
funny.
dude looks bad the whole
He
movie.
did it. He
God, that's actually
he looks
there's a-
like if you
yeah.
took the John Constantine disheveled slider and cranked it up over where it should end.
And then you
Like,
deselected the only wear black clothes button. So he's got
Constantine
these
wears a
clashing
brown
patterns
trench
and
coat.
shit.
That's very important.
Well, sure,
yeah, no,
but
he's
his jackets and his ties are all just black.
Yeah, he does not give a shit.
Yeah, you can't
He's
go
like,
wrong
I'm
with that."
supposed to wear a suit, so I will, I guess.
That's one of the things that I do love about Mills as a character is and Ebert mentions it in his review, Morgan Freeman wears a hat everywhere because the city's raining all the time. He has a hat and a trench coat constantly.
Yeah.
And Mills is bare head, no trench coat, regular clothes, soaked to the bone, the entire movie, miserable about it.
Yeah. Oh, speaking of, the reason it's raining for almost the entire movie is ease of continuity, basically. They were sort of rushing to get Brad Pitt's scenes done so that he could leave to do his next project. So
Oh, because he's an expensive guy
Just-
to keep around too long.
and
yeah.
and this was like he was just coming off of fucking Legends of the Fall and that other movie that he did the previous year. So like this is a time that he was like really, really in demand, and one of the reasons that he took this movie was because he has just done Legends of the Fall, and he wanted to avoid getting typecast as a particular kind of romantic interest. So he wanted to do something
Makes
a little
sense.
darker and grittier to get away from that.
And instead, he got typecast as the douchebag in a David Fincher movie.
Yeah. I've got a new type.
You know,
all
I
right.
do respect that though, because actors that really try to avoid their types, I nothing but respect. I think Daniel Radcliffe is the best example of that
Oh,
because he's constantly
I have no
everything
idea
he
what
has
he's
taken.
doing.
He's taken nothing but bullshit since the
The
Harry Potter
weirdest
movies.
roles. He was in.
He's like, oh my god, wouldn't it be cool if I played a guy who had guns that are like stuck on his hands?
that's
Oh,
not even the weirdest
That's
one.
not. Wouldn't it be
The
funny if I
weirdest
was a
one is-
farting corpse?
Okay.
Okay,
Sure,
Guns
I don't
Akimbo is I've got guns taped to my hands. The Swiss Army Man is
He's a corpse, right?
I am a farting corpse that a man is projecting consciousness onto.
It's great.
Yeah.
And that's by the guys who did Everything Everywhere All at Once, I believe. The Daniels.
Yes, it is. Yeah.
So, you know.
Listen, I'm overjoyed for Daniel Radcliffe and what he's able to do now because of all his
'Cause he can
money
do what
he
he
made
wants.
from Harry
Godly
Potter.
Harry Potter money.
Yeah, he can do anything
He
he,
can do
wants for the rest of
anything
his
he
life.
wants.
him.
Him and Arpat are literally just living their lives.
Oh, he
at
was
this
doing
point.
full nude Broadway stuff.
Radcliffe? Yeah.
Radcliffe did full nude on Broadway as soon as he got out of his Harry Potter stuff.
Just so everyone
because he
knew.
wanted to make sure that everyone knew he was an adult and not a child
Right.
David
anymore.
Tennant. I don't know what this is about British actors. David Tennant has also done full nude stage work.
Huh.
It's like a pretty. I remember when Miley Cyrus was getting out of Hannah Montana
yeah.
and she started doing a lot more like adult performances.
The
and
Wrecking
people were
Ball
like,
era.
oh my gosh, she went crazy. What happened?
Mhm.
It's all like a stunt to get away from like that child
Yeah, to
persona
be like,
that
look,
you were
I'm a
known for
fucking adult
and
now.
like change your like social image.
Mhm.
And it works.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
works really well, and I'm happy. Again, I'm super happy for them that they like don't have to. Miley Cyrus as well. People kind of shit on her for a lot of things,
Yeah.
specifically like having a really raspy voice. I hate it when people make fun of like her vocal fry. It's like, look, guys, she's been through it.
People have
Didn't she
voices.
also just
Get
put out a
over
s-
it. Fucking
Yeah.
Didn't she also just put out a song talking about how she hated that she had to go to the lengths she did to separate from her like child star persona?
I don't
That
know.
sounds
But
about
everyone
right.
made her do it because they wouldn't take her seriously otherwise.
Yeah.
Wouldn't be surprised.
Miley, Brittany, and Kesha, every day of my life, I'm like, I'm so sorry that I was such a shitty middle schooler and I thought it was cool to hate you guys.
Not me. I liked Kesha.
Mm.
I still do.
I liked Kesha in secret, and I'm ashamed. It's like I've like denied her 3 times in the rooster crowed or whatever.
That's a
Piper,
Bible
that's a
reference.
Bible reference.
Wow.
Is it me, Jesus?
I gotta go research the Bible. Anyways, back to this
Have
movie.
you read this shit? It's
Oh my
crazy.
God.
Sorry.
Okay, so
David Fincher made a movie about it.
holy shit.
Some weirdo in Seattle.
Oh my god.
Okay, so just a couple of little things. There's a couple of things in this movie that are just because of people who were making it, basically. Kevin Spacey's prison jumpsuit that he's wearing at the end says Bardak County Jail, you may have noticed on the back.
I definitely did.
This is because Eleanor Bardak was the name of the costume supervisor on the movie.
I love when people
yeah.
do shit like
I
that.
love
That makes
that
me
so
very
much.
happy.
Also, the lust victim They had a different actor planned, and then that actor dropped out. So the person who we see in the movie is Kat Mueller, who was the set decorator on the movie. She received $500 for 6 hours of filming over the course of 2 days, but she described being nude in front of Brad Pitt as a perk. So great for her.
That's such a 90s fucking thing
Right.
to say. Oh
Also,
my god.
Throwing it out there, I was curious, right?
Right.
And there's a point in the movie where Somerset's like, Mills, how much money do you have? And he's like, I don't know, I got $50. So I'm like, well, how much money is $50 in 95?
That's like 150, right?
It's actually no, it's $100. It's
Oh.
actually an almost perfect 2-to-1
In
ratio.
what, in 95?
Yeah.
Jeez.
I hate it here.
Those are Clinton
That's
dollars
a
at
year
work.
before I was born.
That's the year that I was born.
It's
3 years after I was born.
Anyways, now we've
Old,
all
old,
very
old.
blatantly dated ourselves here.
That's like insane to me that like that's so depressing. I'm
No, that was
okay.
really depressing when I read that.
Right. That's
really
As a person
depressing.
who was born before 95 also, shout out to the 30 Club, Emma. Woohoo.
Oh,
Let's
man.
go.
Fucking do it.
Adults on a podcast.
anyway,
what will
anyways.
they do?
I mentioned.
So that was, she got paid $1,000 to be naked in front of Brad Pitt
Wow.
in modern money, which actually makes it sound like so much less.
It kind of.
There's something about the 500 that sounds more real to me. $1,000 is like, that's
Oh
it.
man,
A
is that
grand?
it? Ooh.
You're
Come
dropping
on.
money on this, and you only did that. Whereas $500 is like, ooh, $500.
She
That's
was also
literally-
getting
yeah, that's
paid
such
for
a
like
man.
all the rest of her work that she did on the movie, right? But for that specific bit, it was the $500 and also Brad Pitt being there.
That's so funny.
The sloth victim spent 14 hours in makeup for every
I
day
was
of shooting there.
so curious about that.
Here's what's really fun
Jesus.
about that scene, though. Well, actually, what's bad about the 14 hours in the makeup is since it's on his entire body, he had to not let his stomach move when he breathed the entire time. So he said that by the time he got to the point of being allowed to cough in John C. McGinley's face, that was like a massive, massive relief to him because he was just able to fucking breathe again after that.
So
But get this.
slightly off topic, but okay, yeah.
The SWAT guys
really,
were
really
not
quick.
told that was a guy in makeup. They were told there's a mannequin in the bed.
No.
So when he coughs
my
and he moves and they
God.
freak out, that's their real reactions.
No.
I love that.
That's so
You
funny.
know,
Sometimes
A lot of the
we should
time you
lie
hear
to
trivia
actors
like
every
that,
now and then, you know.
and it's like, yeah, a lot of the time you hear trivia like that, and it's like really like fucked up, and it's like, oh, actually, no one was told that they were going to have their clothes ripped off of them in a typhoon, and then there was a close up on them, and it's like, well, that's
so their
fucked,
reactions
dude.
were real, and it's like that's
It's like Chris Pratt showing up full nude in that one shot of Parks and
Yeah.
Rec because
Yeah.
they couldn't nail the take. So he's like,
Majorly
I'll just
not
take my
okay.
pants off.
Yeah.
yeah, majorly not okay versus this where it's like okay, that's actually
They're
really
just
funny.
playing a prank on John McGinley. That's okay. You're allowed.
So I remember watching an interview of Doug Jones while he was getting his makeup done for The Fawn and Pan's Labyrinth, where he's like,
That's
I
the,
gotta tell you, this is no, that
that's
was the
the other
Pale
guy.
Man.
Fawn,
The
yeah,
Fawn
still haven't
is
seen Pan's
literally
Labyrinth.
just a fawn.
the one with horns and weird eyes.
Gotcha.
He said that it's one of the best prosthetic costumes he's ever worn because the torso was disconnected from the upper half. So all the weight of the chest plate's on his shoulders, but the torso weight is like the legs are also like hooked up in different places. So the weight was more evenly distributed. And he's like, and I can turn. Look. So a lot of those, he's like, usually when they put you in the full body rubber prosthetics, you have to be so careful about how you move. Because it can disrupt the makeup, but he's like, he's like, I'm so mobile right now. So I love hearing from like physical actors who do like versus one of the ones that I hate the most is the Killer Croc in Suicide Squad.
Right.
Suicide Squad won best makeup at that Oscars for this bullshit. It's a full like rubber suit, and because he can't fucking move in it, the character is like emotionless and just horribly acted, and I fully blame the suit. But yeah, I love hearing special effects makeup stories about, yeah, I literally wasn't allowed to move my stomach. So that's like
Just
several
couldn't
hours
move.
built up of phlegm that I just went like,
He said it was horrible. Apparently,
that sucks, bestie.
yeah, apparently it was bad enough that like Morgan Freeman remarked to him multiple times that he looked bad.
Yeah. Well, I
Poor
mean, like,
baby.
so speaking of unhealthy practices
Oh,
in
right.
film, I read that like David Fincher or whoever was doing casting or whatever originally was thinking like, we need like a 90-pound guy for this part to make this work. And then this actor came in and he was like 96 pounds. And he was like, you're perfect, but I think the trivia says, oh, he said, you're perfect, but you need to lose 6 pounds as a joke. And then was surprised when the guy went and lost 6 more pounds. And
Oh
it's
God.
like, no, like you definitely didn't say that as a joke. And that's really unhealthy.
That's, yeah, 90 is super underweight for like dudes, like specifically with given like a lot of like the height index stuff.
Yeah.
Like at my height, like 110 is like underweight. So that's like genuinely upsetting.
Yeah.
Poor guy.
Yeah.
Oh well.
wild.
I'm glad he
But
got
at
to
least
scare
he
some
wasn't in the
actors, at
scene
least.
that required a cockroach wrangler on set.
Hello?
Yeah,
I read
Yeah,
about that.
the
That's
dead
so
They
gross.
had allegedly, quote, 7 crates of cockroaches.
Thanks, babe.
I don't know how many cockroaches are in a crate, but 7 is too many of them. And they got like up inside the like suit that the guy was wearing and shit, and it's all just horrible.
Ah!
Yeah, the way they put it, they were like they had to plug his ears and nose so that the cockroaches wouldn't crawl in there, but that didn't stop them from crawling into his underpants.
Yeah.
So
You couldn't pay me enough.
I remember, I'm sure we'll
No.
talk about this more on The Thing when we get to it, but weren't there some like malfunctioning hydraulics and shit that were like almost super dangerous on that set as well?
Not almost. There was a rather significant fire at one point.
Okay, I was like, I know I'm remembering something.
Yeah, I don't believe
specifically to
anyone
do
was
with
actually
this
hurt in the
special
fire,
effects
but it
guy.
was like months and months
Right.
of work just erased.
Yeah, I remember that now. Yeah. Yep.
And
Yeah.
that's part of the reason that he ended up being hospitalized for exhaustion while working on the effects for The Thing.
That's
But this is...
I'm glad they unionized.
This is a guy who's incredibly good at his job, though. This is a guy who really knows his shit. Like, we talk about Tom Savini in that kind of context, right? But this guy, there was originally an actual autopsy scene in this movie, but then Rob Bottin convinced them to cut it because it was too inaccurate. He looked at it and said, this is fucking wrong and you can't put it in the movie. And that's why it's not in
Go
there.
off.
I really like when people actually
This
care.
is one of those
It makes
movies
me
that
happy.
seems like everyone in it was just super into making sure it was as good as it could possibly be. Everything that I've read about
You
it,
can
the
tell.
making of it, seems like everyone was just really, really invested.
And
And it shows.
can I divide attention from the trivia for just a
I'm
second
running
to
out of
talk about
trivia,
a scene?
so go. Let's just change the
Sweet.
subject full on.
Sounds good. Okay, I legitimately am super impressed by how natural they were able to make it that we didn't see John Doe's face during the chase scene.
Yeah.
Every time that they like cut to him, I was like, who is it? And they did such a good job up to the point where he's got the gun to Mill's head
Yeah.
and it's raining and there's water
God,
dripping
I
in
love
his
that
face.
shot.
It's
The focus so crisp and clear on the gun with him up in shadows above.
And it's like you wouldn't be able to see him, would you?
Yeah.
Like
Oh my
that's
God.
it was so fun to be like, it really had me invested in like also just that chase scene in general of like, I feel like a lot of the time when there are shootouts, chase scenes, intense moments in highly populated areas, again, that like Greek chorus of a like character
right.
like
Everyone
collection
reacting.
is is just not really like drawn attention to. I think the like club scenes in the Batman is like a version of this where it's just like no one really. I get that it's a crime infested area,
Sure, but it's like nobody
and whatever.
reacts at all.
Yeah, or they kind of just go like, and they scatter. I love the varied reactions of the residents in this apartment complex.
Yeah, there's gunshots, and you hear some guy yell out his window, "Shut the fuck up!" Like what?
I love the fucking the fucking residents just throwing
they just start
shit
throwing
at
things at him.
Yeah, I put a note in here. I'm like, oh, this movie's set in Sam Raimi's New York.
Yeah. Also, incidentally, you just walked us right into the last of my trivia here. That specific chase scene.
Oh, excellent.
You watch the flow of it. You notice how it's a little bit different from a lot of other chase scenes in a lot of other movies? Brad Pitt is real scared to go around every corner because there's a guy fucking shooting at him. You have to be scared of the guy who's fucking shooting at you when you walk around that corner. This is something that, again, the writer was thinking about a lot while writing it. He was just like, I feel like if I was trying to chase a guy and he was shooting at me, I'd be probably scared that he was going to shoot me. I'd be a little wary to go around corners. So he got really, based on that line of thinking, he got really tired of seeing chase scenes in movies where the hero is just always boldly striding around every corner, always knows what direction to turn, what's going on. Mills full on loses him at every single turn. He finds him again when he fires the gun at him.
Yeah.
This is the way that kind of chase would actually play out.
I had a lot of fun with it for that reason. I loved it.
I really enjoyed, not only was he like afraid to keep going, and that let John Doe continue to get further and further away because he obviously doesn't have that same concern.
Right.
But just watching him bumble through this massive apartment building, jumping out windows, trying to catch this guy, it really highlights again that he doesn't know what he's getting into in the big city. Because earlier in the movie, he references, he's like, "Oh, so Somerset, you ever shot anyone?" or some stupid ass question like that, right?
Shoot a man,
but
and
that's
his head
like the
explodes.
vibe of the question. And he's just like, "I pulled my gun once, and I didn't have to shoot it, and I've never shot anyone." Blah blah blah. Like his whole little thing, and then immediately Brad Pitt is just like, "Well, I pulled a gun and shot a man once because I got shot at, and things happen." And hearing that story where it's like, okay, so he's already in an area where it was not as intense as it is right here. Right. He has already crossed a line, and
that Somerset never crossed.
That Somerset in his time in Adel, in
it's Gotham
in Crime
City.
Town, USA.
It's Crime Town.
In Gotham City. He's never done that before.
Yeah. He even
He's
says,
never done
doesn't he say that he like pulled his gun and didn't aim it at anyone even?
I
can't remember. But like we get to see one of the only times, like on one hand counted, we watch him tick off one of the other only times he ever pulled a gun in chasing John Doe. He had his gun ready as he was approaching where Mills was. Yeah. Like this is a guy who like tries to be as careful as possible, and watching Mills burn through this building with no regard for the safety of like apartment inhabitants that he keeps kicking the doors down of because he thinks that's where John Doe went through.
Yeah. I have two things.
All right.
Damn, I forgot one of them. Oh, the difference.
Go for it.
No, go ahead. Go, Emma. You go. I remembered it now.
You go.
Okay. I'm gonna say the difference between, like, for me, a lot of the time, a detective thriller and a horror. I was thinking about *Malignant* when it comes to this.
Oh, sure.
And something that makes *Silence of the Lambs* such a like tie between the two is the focus on the potential victim versus the focus on the detective solving the case. Because in *Malignant*, we're following Maddie basically the whole time. Right. The detectives are there, but it's just to provide context for scenes Maddie cannot be at. And in *Se7en*, we've got, this is the detectives. The victims are not shown outside of when they are found. and we are focusing on the personalities of the detectives and the killer as well. And then Silence of the Lambs does follow some victims outside of, specifically the one girl, outside of the detective story. But the detective and Hannibal are also focused. Agent Starling and Hannibal are focused on as well. So it's a really interesting tie of both, because I think it depends on who you're projecting yourself onto that makes the story more of a thriller or more of a horror. Because if you're putting yourself in the position of the victim, then of course it's going to lean more towards the horrific side, versus if you're putting yourself in the position of the detective, it feels more thrillery. Same with Prisoners, because both the dad and Detective Loki are both investigating this thing, and I think that's part of why it sits squarely in the thriller zone for me, versus if it had had more focus on what the girls were going through. So that's just a thought that I had while watching this one. Since we'd had this conversation earlier, this was something new that occurred to me.
That makes sense. Yeah.
So I want to.
Emma had something to say.
I'm sorry, Emma. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I had something to say. I wish, and this is going to be a hot topic, I think. I wish we got some more personality out of Mills, where you all are making a weird face.
I'm dissociating. I was gonna say I wish we got more personality out of Tracy, but like I've accepted that's
like a big thing for me too. I wish we saw more personality from Mills in his relationship with Tracy, because when Morgan Freeman goes over to dinner, they're talking. And she's like, oh, yeah, we've been together like since high school. I instantly knew he was going to be the one I would marry because he was the funniest person I've ever met.
And then he does not make a single person laugh.
Never funny at any point in the movie. He's not like a jokey person.
Like he doesn't make joke about accidentally shaving his nipple off at all. Morgan Freeman laughs at that. So.
Okay, true. So
does he laugh at that, or does he go?
But like his characterization in the movie is not like a jokey, fun person. And I understand like the subtext of the movie is like he moved him and Tracy there because he probably just wanted more exciting police work. And now she's stressed and kind of miserable, and that's putting a strain on their relationship. And I just wish, I don't know, I wish we saw like a bit more of like them.
Yeah, I would love to see more of their relationship. I think that would be a great addition.
Really would have loved to. Especially because they call each other idiot and loser, which is like a really cute little like, oh, haha, this is how playful their relationship is. I don't see anything to back that up in either of their personalities, that's the type of... Because Noah and I do that shit all the time, but that's reflected in how we interact with basically everyone.
I'm glad you've put thought into how well-written your relationship is. That's very important.
Took a few rounds of editing, but I think we narrowed it down.
No, I'm just saying it didn't feel realistic to me, because I know that in my past relationship, I was not comfortable using those teasing terms because I knew how sensitive my ex was and I didn't want to hurt him. But Noah and I, even as friends, were like playfully throwing, like I made the comic that like, hey, Noah, look at me, bitch, was like from when we were friends. And so when we got into a relationship, I felt comfortable mixing in the genuine, like loving terms and affection with the same kind of playful teasing. But we don't see any of that from Tracy and Mills. And I think for me, that is my biggest detractor from this movie, because it really, the thing that fuels me through that last scene is Brad Pitt's acting, and the fact that in each shot we can kind of see his entire thought process as he's like juggling everything without saying anything out loud. I think it's really well done. Unfortunately, I just didn't buy the relationship enough to really, really feel like I was in his shoes, to feel like I was seeing, because like with the marriage in Annihilation, I feel like the scenes are done enough. There's enough chemistry there. and there's enough history explored as to like what's going on there that in that reuniting scene at the end, there's so much buildup and that it works for me really well. And this one, I get to the end and I'm kind of like, I'm sad. This movie's really done very well. I'm disgusted for Mills, and I understand the emotional position he's in. I am not emotionally devastated. You know?
Yeah.
I am not. I feel like I should be devastated by the reveal, and I just kind of wasn't. And I think that's specifically because I don't feel like the relationship was super well built or believable.
Even if we weren't getting more of the two of them together, I would have liked just to get more of her, just for her to be a whole character in the movie more.
Yeah.
I understand why she's not,
something-
though, because, like, what are you going to do, make the movie longer?
Yes,
And
though.
also, the movie's not about her. Like, I follow the reasoning. It's still incorrect. We should still have more of her, because if she's going to be important, let her be important.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Because part of the reason I'm able to peg her immediately as like this bitch is gonna die is because she's a complete like trope and archetype of that type of character in detective stories. This isn't new for like 90s detective thrillers. This is like 80s bullshit. This is like going back to like fucking Sherlock Holmes, you know?
It's borrowing a lot
like,
from like old like noirs and stuff as well, right?
Yeah, 100%. Like, you can pick up pretty quickly on exactly what her character is, and I think they lean on that to kind of make up for the fact that they don't show a lot of her stuff. But I don't know. I feel like when I've been watching a lot of horror movies recently, there's been a couple we've even talked about on the podcast where we get into it, and I'm like, I would just watch a movie about these characters. I wish this wasn't a horror movie, because I would like to just be in this moment with these characters. I felt that way about Talk to Me as well, where it's like, to me, the way that Talk to Me played out hit hard because I cared about the main character so much. No offense to Mills and Tracy, Somerset is the only bitch in this house I care about at this point. And I care about Mills and Tracy because Somerset cares about them, I think. It ends up being why the ending hits, is because I think that I'm more in Somerset's shoes of like, guys, please. But yeah. I have a question for you, Noah, if you're okay with answering a question.
Okay.
And it's a question I should have asked Emma, so Emma, feel free to also answer this. We're doing this series because we're talking about what got us into horror.
Oh, yeah.
And I am curious as to, like, if you can remember, what was it about this movie that grabbed you and made you think I can handle more?
It was dark.
What did you want more of?
Dark.
Just
More
dark?
darkness.
That's so nebulous. Is it?
I don't know what to tell you. It was the movie was the darkest movie I'd seen to date. I had watched a couple other Morgan Freeman detective movies. This was just me ticking off a list of. The other two were dollar bin movies that are actually like, they're not dollar bin value, but the store had a lot of them, you know? And this was me shelling out an extra $3 to pay for the $4 Morgan Freeman detective movie. And
Additional reference to the number 7.
oh my God.
Holy shit.
And you know, because of that, I it's every now and then it happens on this podcast too, where I'm reminded that films can be really, really good. And just because I happen to hit a stretch where we watch like the Resident Evil movies, and I'm like, oh my God, movies suck, man. Or it's, when you watch stuff that's middling for a while, suddenly you get punched in the face by something that was directed with intention and meaning. And I love Along Came a Spider and Kiss the Girls, right? Those are two great movies. I enjoy them a lot. But they are not amazing movies. They are middlingly directed. They don't have a visual identity. And then I got
They're fun, though.
gobsmacked by this movie being so much better than the other ones that I had seen. Right. And it made me realize, and the connection I made was it was a dark, gritty movie, and I wanted more of that. And that is probably where, like, that's where a lot of that stuff ended up entering the scene for me. Because I can't remember what the actual like first set of horror movies. I ended up,
that
'cause I
was my
remember
next
watching,
question. Was like, what's the progression then?
I mean, I
Where did
remember
you go
watching
from there?
Nightmare in the Basement.
Oh yeah,
with Jeff.
the haunted basement. Yeah,
The Haunted Basement.
not the usual.
I
Basement
remember watching
that we
Nightmare
watched
on Elm
movies
Street.
in, a different one.
I was big into like action movies at the time.
Yeah, it was a lot of
and then
Schwarzenegger movies at the time.
And I remember transitioning from that into watching movies alone that were, in my mind, deemed not allowed to be watched. There was
Things
because
our
my mom
parents
didn't
would have
like
looked
horror
down on,
movies.
certainly.
Yeah, because I watched The Shining because I remember my like mom saying that she thought The Shining was good. So I got it for her one year as kind of like a half joking Mother's Day gift, right?
They watched it with us on
or a
purpose,
birthday
did
gift
they
or
not?
something.
That and
Yeah, they watched it.
Alien: Silence of the
Alien.
Lambs as well.
Yeah.
That was like all that
So,
same
like-
summer, I think.
Yeah, a lot of that stuff hit pretty quickly. I do remember Saw being the first horror movie where I was like, oh, this is what horror movies are. It's a similar issue to being introduced to, this is a music thing, all you music heads out there. I got introduced to deathcore and was told that was death metal. And I thought, oh, death metal is the heaviest shit there is. And then I listened to real death metal, and it doesn't sound like deathcore. And death metal heads make fun of deathcore because they said it sounds like garbage. And it threw me off for a long time. Same with horror, I think, where by essentially moving from this to Saw in a reasonably fast progression, I thought that that's what horror was. So this other stuff was like thrillers and like nebulous horror. I didn't know what horror could be at the time. I just knew that I wanted something more from it, and I didn't know where I landed.
Noah, you were just talking about Long Came the Spider and Kiss the Girls, the Morgan Freeman, Alex Cross movies. Him having the switchblade in this movie is almost certainly a reference to those movies, right?
I feel like this is a spiritual successor character.
Right, like, I don't know. Obviously, this character wasn't written with the intent of him being legally distinct from Alex Cross, right? But at the moment that they cast Morgan Freeman and they put a switchblade in his pocket the whole time, it's like, come on, what else can that mean?
Right.
They even draw attention to it,
yeah.
even though it never actually like means anything for the plot.
He opens the box with it.
Yeah, he opens the box
the
and
box
he
with
cuts
it.
the back of the painting.
Yeah.
And it's really funny because Mill's like, oh, what the fuck is that? And he's like,
It's a switchblade. And the conversation
One of my-
goes nowhere
Get over
from
yourself.
there. It's got to just be that they
This-
want people looking at the fact that Morgan Freeman has the switchblade again, right? Like,
Also, it was super illegal to have one.
yeah.
This is my favorite Morgan Freeman tick that he does, and I've started picking up on it, is when someone will like be talking to his character and he's not fully listening and goes, yeah.
Oh, yeah, he does do that, doesn't he?
It makes me so happy every time. I don't know why.
I especially love the scene when it's like toward the beginning, they're at the Gluttony House, right? And he's just looking around and Mills won't shut up. But what he
Yeah, and
says
then
to Mills isn't, you should shut up now. What he says is, can you please be quiet? I love the way he says that instead of just saying shut up, because it implies that like he wasn't even paying attention to whatever he was saying.
It sounds
It was
like,
all just
it
background
sounds like
noise for him, and then eventually he was like, this needs to stop. Like,
I love it very much.
I love
And
that.
eventually, when it doesn't stop enough, he's like, how about you go knock on doors?
Yeah, go somewhere else.
Yeah.
Work outside.
Go get
Okay.
fucked.
I want to repeat my question to Emma, though,
right.
about Prisoners, because I know Emma didn't get into horror as much until recently. But like, was that directly tied to what made you want to like do this podcast with us and like talk about horror, or is this like when asked the question of like, is there a movie you watched that like made you think you could handle this stuff? Is that just what came to mind?
So I think when I was young, I was traumatized by the Bloody Mary story.
Oh, okay.
Where I first heard about it in Germany. Me and my brothers and some church friends were standing outside of the church, like, which was in this like small German village, and like I was the youngest one there. I don't remember why, but they started talking about Bloody Mary, and how like, oh, if you're in the bathroom in the dark, and you say her name 3 times, she'll appear, and ooh. freaked me the fuck out. And so, like I was that kind of made me afraid of the dark for a while. And specifically, like I was not comfortable, and I'm still largely not comfortable sleeping with doors open. Like normally, it's semi-relaxed, but normally, like, especially when I was living semi-alone, I would go through the house and like close all of the doors, but very specifically the bathroom door and my door. But over the years, from that, and then just growing up, going to the movies a lot and seeing horror movie trailers, I like always closed my eyes and they scared me, and like the audio really creeped me out.
It is their job.
And then, true. And then in 2011, I mixed up my dates. I thought this movie came out after Prisoners, but in 2011, Cabin in the Woods came out. And my oldest brother, Corey, was like, hey, this movie is really good. I think you would like it. You should check it out. And I was like, it's a horror movie. That's scary. And he was like, it's also like a comedy, so it's like not as bad. And so I gave it a try, really enjoyed it. And I think that may have been one of the openings of the door of, I really like kind of dark mythology. And so I started not like playing horror games or reading horror or anything, but I did enjoy, like, if there was a scary game that people would talk about, I liked going on the Wikipedia and just reading about the lore. And then Prisoners came out, and the movie looked just very intense, and I think I really liked Jake Gyllenhaal back then. And I was
back
like,
before
hey,
we all knew he didn't shower.
yeah, and he stole Taylor Swift's scarf, apparently.
Rude.
But
Sure.
so rude. But so I got a group together to go see that, and I just really loved kind of like some of the creepy lore from that as well, and like the dark tones of the movie and like the intensity of it. And after we left, a couple of the friends specifically were really, I don't want to say traumatized by the movie, but like they played it off that way. And like it really struck them and it really freaked them out. And I was like, oh, I didn't really have that feeling. And so between then and the pandemic, when we started this podcast, I was starting to play around a little bit more with things that could arguably be called horror, but like aren't quite horror, or like half horror, where they're like comedies and like a little bit of horror. And again, I started getting into like no sleep on Reddit. I would like read stories there sometimes of just like, ooh, creepy, like spooky stuff, and enjoying that. And so like this all built up an underlying like subconscious thought of I would probably enjoy horror. And so when you all were tweeting about wanting to do a horror movie podcast to just talk about like all the horror movies you're watching, my large driving force was I just wanted to hang out with you all because you're cool and you're my friends.
Now you know how wrong that was.
I thought I thought it would be fun. Yeah. But then I legitimately thought that, because I pitched as like, at first I was like, I can do the editing because everybody else is really busy, and I'll be like the new person to horror who's like scared at everything. And then as we started watching stuff, I realized I was desensitized, but I legitimately thought I would be really freaked out by everything at first. But I was willing to give it a try because I was like, there are all these other things that like I've been interested in, or that like haven't been as like scary as I thought, or like took them better than I thought I would. And so I was like, so I think I can do this. And then here we are.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's really interesting. Yeah, I love hearing everyone's like journeys with stuff, because obviously one of the first things that I knew about Noah was that he liked horror movies. because I remember in our very first like speech interaction, I specifically mentioned that I wasn't into horror, and I know that's not, obviously that wasn't even true at the time.
Nina doesn't like Saw,
I don't.
which is what Nina thought all horror movies were.
Yeah, we're made for each other over here.
Me, Saw's biggest, Saw's bravest soldier.
We're gonna go see Saw.
John Kramer, sir.
Yeah. God, I'm so sick of. I'm so sorry. Spiral was so bad. Anyway,
Okay, but Spiral sucked, but this new one's gonna be bad in a new way. In a Saw way, not in a Chris Rock way. Fuck Chris Rock.
fuck Chris Rock.
Fucking hate that guy.
Yeah, what was I gonna say? Oh, I'm glad that we get to revisit this kind of conversation now that we've been doing this for God, fuck, what, like 2
3
years?
now.
3 years.
We are about to hit the
Yeah,
third year of Slashtober.
Firstly, insane to me that I was like 2 years into Off the Air, I'm like, I could do a second podcast. I thought it was like way further into Off the Air that I decided to do that.
Wow.
Insane.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Jeez.
Yeah, that was
The last 3 years of that podcast melted together. R.I.P. Off the Air.
R.I.P. off the
R.I.P.
air.
off
But yeah,
the air.
I'm.
Heavy
'Cause
is the head.
the
that
com-
wears the Naruto headband.
I
you
remember
wish
that.
to
I remember
enter
when
the
you
mouth
edited that and you were
and
so proud
drink
of yourself.
the nectar.
But I'm just glad to get to revisit this kind of conversation because it has been so long, and the kind of conversations we were having when this first started, I feel like we all have better understandings of both each other and ourselves now, especially in regards to horror and what we do and don't like, which is like to me, this is me getting mushy. I've been mush. It's been a long weekend. To me, it's really cool because I feel like getting to talk to you guys about horror has helped me better articulate and kind of understand what it is that I love about this genre. And so it's really fun to revisit this and to be like, oh yeah, now that we've had several years under our belts of like talking about and watching so many movies that we might not have watched if it weren't for each other, just to kind of revisit this and be like, oh yeah, this is, now that I think about it, this is this and this is that. So I'm glad we're doing this series.
Actually, because we do have to wrap because we're closing in on
That's
a
part of
pretty
why I
long
asked
one.
the
Pretty
question.
long
But-
one so far, yeah.
I would like to recount a story from Off the Air, actually. So Dan asked me what it was I liked about horror movies. And at the time, it was not the most cohesive answer I've ever given, probably. But the gist of what I was trying to get across was I really like how you can push the envelope in a horror movie. Because if a movie doesn't have a horror tinge to it, there is a
lot of boundaries.
you like subconsciously know that there's a line it won't cross, a line of violence, a line of psychological content, a line of like blood, even like
yeah,
not like just
even if
that
not
type
a
of
limit
stuff,
on
but
the
like
violence, but a
even
limit in the way that the violence is like portrayed, right?
like painful sadness, like misery isn't going to be delved into. And now, obviously, you don't need to be a horror movie to talk about like misery and hard situations and things like that. There's a lot of very good dramas out there that handle that very, very well. And you don't need to be a horror movie to like contain graphic violence. What's every war movie if not just here's some violence, goodbye, you know? Or like, oh, every boxing movie, you know, like there's a lot of other stuff that like can do different things, but I have yet to find a genre that brings like the emotional roller coaster that horror has been able to bring me within single movies. It's like, you know, you go through like a harrowing experience in some movies, and then you get picked right back up by this big hand that's like, and there's a light at the end of the tunnel, and you get set back up on a little hill in the sunshine, and the movie ends, and you're like, wow, I went through it there. That was great. I don't, you know, or maybe you don't get picked back up, and maybe it's the end of Black Coat's Daughter, and it leaves you at the bottom of a fucking pit, and you're like, damn, this ruined my night.
Man, I forgot
This is
about Black
fucking
Coat's
wild.
Daughter.
Watch Black Coat's Daughter again. I loved that movie.
That's what I love about this genre is there's just a lot that it can do to you. And you know that going in, and that's the fun of it, is just like seeing, well, what adventure am I going to go on? And when you don't like it, when you stop enjoying, okay, no one's forcing you to be the weirdo that only watches horror movies. You turn it off. You go do something else. The mood changes because you can now absorb something else that like makes you feel better about it. You know, like, oh, you're really not having a good time watching this movie? Okay, you turn it off. You watch some doofy ass YouTuber or something that like you feel good about. You change the vibe. You can go back if you want to, or you don't have to. Maybe you found that's the line you don't like to cross. But there's so much else within the genre that doesn't touch that. So you can still stay there even. I don't know. I really like that. That's what I like about it.
That's very good, Noah. Sorry, that sounds patronizing, but that made me really happy.
Very good,
Very
Noah.
good.
Pat
No.
on head. Pat on
Good
head.
gold star, Noah.
That made me.
You
That
can pick
made
any
me really
candy out of this bowl.
Are these eyeballs? No, they're peeled grapes, you idiot. Oldest horror house trick in the book.
Classic.
Horror house, haunted house.
He then goes on to pick a Werther's original.
I didn't even put one in
Yeah.
there. I don't know where he got it from.
He just managed to find one.
I have it in my breast pocket at all times.
Okay,
do you think?
speaking of Noah and the things that he does,
Take note.
it's notes times. Let's do Noah's notes. Da 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 da.
The da-da-da-da is Nina scrolling through a page and a half of pre-notes that doesn't even include a written summary.
Noah says, Nina's so mad about learning American Horror Story ripped off this movie's intro. I was angry. I still am.
It's worth being angry.
Oh my gosh, the intro. So when the intro played, I literally told Piper, I'm like, I'm really glad we don't do intro credits anymore. But also, these credits make me think that this is a student film done in like the early 20-teens about like creepypasta stories.
That's what those teens were trying to emulate so bad. They wanted to be Se7en so bad.
So actually, I think I have a note in here that Oh yeah, movies anymore don't open with an overlong vibes establishing intro, and
I do like that.
You know
actually,
what?
yeah.
There's an element of me missing vibes based intros that are just like it doesn't this long of an intro. I did not need, but
I
a
would
vibe setting intro. I
listen.
like.
I will tune out to a remix of Closer by 9 Inch Nails
Always.
at any given point in time. It didn't even feel that long because something about 9 Inch Nails just turns off the part of my brain that registers time passing. So I did not think it was that long, but I'm going to blame Trent Reznor for that.
Also,
it's
this
remixed by
this is
Coil.
Shout out to Coil and Trent Reznor. Now this note here, this is a shout out to...
Stop reading your own notes.
I'm allowed to read one note.
Okay, this is your second one.
Shut up.
Point
This
of the
note is a
segment.
shout out to my siblings in the chat. Mills has our dad's coffee
Oh,
mug.
he does. He's got that mug. Yeah, I saw that.
The green mug. Green mug.
Green mug.
You guys are going to have to... Is it still at your parents'
Oh yeah,
house?
my mom bought like 6 of them because
Yeah,
my dad
she
was
managed
paranoid
to
about
find
breaking
some,
his mug.
yeah.
And his is way better. It's a much heavier glass mug.
Yeah, it's the
But
original, you know.
the replacements now exist so that he doesn't need to worry
Romance.
about his mug being
I
destroyed.
think he
That's-
uses the replacements more often than the original now, just out of concern for potentially breaking it.
That's so...
He's been using that,
that
thing
is
for
the-
so
okay.
long.
That is the most
30 years
like,
at least.
true to your parents shit, and also the most romantic shit I've ever heard.
Right.
Like, that's so sweet.
Also, in classic Tim fashion, I think he rolled his eyes when she bought him spares.
He thought it was a little silly, yeah.
yeah, she knows him though.
She does.
She's got him.
Back to the movie,
Noah
though.
says, I'm trying not to read the big long paragraph ones as much.
That's the downside of me having watched a movie before. Is there's
right.
not a lot of
It's all
like
thought
just
out.
plain brain to paper.
There is one here. It says Lamau forgot there was real slur hours
Oh,
here, so
yeah.
I think that was the F slur.
Yeah, about having to. He drops that one because he was left a note saying, "Read the Divine
He
Comedy."
calls Dante Alighieri the F slur,
Because
and
he
I
wrote
don't think
poetry.
that's because he wrote poetry.
That's the line. Is
and I'm like,
poetry
That's
writing.
pretty gay.
I think
slur.
I think there are reasons to call Dante Alighieri the F slur that don't include poetry.
His feelings toward Virgil. For
It's the content of the poems, right? It's not the fact that they are poems.
No, I'm not saying that because I hate him. I'm saying that because he wrote a whole book about how much he wanted to have sex with Virgil and how Virgil would be like, "That's very cool of you, and I love you."
Do you want to hang out with me and my friends in hell? Do you have a note about
Anyway.
the dare sticker on Mills's car?
No,
Because I
but
thought
that's
it was
funny.
hilarious,
That's
that he had it.
Noah says, what is this in reference to?
The note says, "TBH, I'd have a hard time not laughing at the whole situation as an outsider."
Oh.
That is when the subway rolled right through the dinner party.
Oh yeah, no, that was incredibly funny.
I would-
That was a good scene.
I think I would be laughing if that was my apartment too, right? Because it's like, what do I live in a fucking, Sam Raimi's Spider-Man ass apartment? Like fucking.
I
Established,
will
yes.
say I do love how that to me completely establishes why Tracy would reach out to Somerset, because it seems like in that moment, it establishes why she connects with Somerset and feels trusting to him versus Mills, because Mills still wants to like this city even in spite of its pitfalls. He doesn't see like the absurdity and the humor of the situation, but Tracy and Somerset are both like, yeah. This is
Yeah, it
what we're
sucks,
dealing
right?
with.
Well, that
And I wish
to just be like,
I wish we'd seen more of that.
yeah, but just to be like kind of laughing as you commiserate over a stupid situation like that is one of the most genuine
Yeah, it's
kinds
such
of
a good
interactions
bonding
you
experience.
can possibly have, right?
And Somerset and Mills have that separately later on. Which is like great for them, but like the fact that Tracy and Somerset have such an instant connection and then he pulls back later, I just wish that she hadn't been reading a checklist of things we need to know about Tracy before she dies. You know?
Yeah.
Sorry. She's a teacher. She's pregnant. She hates it here.
I knew I wanted to
She
marry him
dies.
the first time that we went on a date.
Noah says, love this fucking Matrix ass dude vibing while the cops kick down doors in his apartment building. Yeah, there's a man in like a trench coat and sunglasses just like hanging out. And this is pre-Matrix, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So very 90s. Noah does just have a lot of shit. Oh, Noah says, it's my favorite crooked cop and biker. I love Mark Boone Jr. He's credited as greasy FBI man.
I love Mark Boone Jr. He's the best part of Sons of Anarchy.
That's a
And
really impressive
he does
statement to make.
nothing but play greasy cop characters in any cop role he plays. He's
no,
the,
he's a
what do you
Noah-coded
call it?
actor?
He plays a crooked cop in Batman Begins. He plays a crooked cop in Fast and Furious 2. He plays a crooked cop in this. Like
He's
I love
got
him.
The
he's got a
crooked
type.
cop.
In Sons of Anarchy, he's an Elvis impersonator that's also the accountant for the biker club. Like, come on,
He is a
man.
good character. Noah says, this apartment is fucking massive. We can't possibly be in New York. That was another clue towards Seattle for me. I don't know, something about the style of building. I was like, that feels Seattle-ish. Noah says, what the fuck is this? My guy, that's clearly blood.
Yeah, that's
I
when
had
John
that
Doe
same
comes
thought.
in. When it's just like, what the fuck is this? What the fuck is this? Dude, he's covered in blood. What do you
funny.
mean?
Yeah, like, did you not see that? Come on.
Noah says, after going on about like obviously like Kevin Spacey's performance in the monologue scene, he goes, "Fucking hell, man, Dave, you're missing the whole point of everything John Doe has done." Yeah, I really like the characterization of Mills, not purposefully, but just still like not getting it, because he's not the type of person who gives a shit about why a killer's doing what they're doing.
He never tries to understand anything at all.
And I love that for him.
He's stupid.
He's aggressively
He's naive.
dumb.
He doesn't know what he's doing here. He just wanted a promotion because he was bored in the country.
Noah says, even knowing the twist, my fucking stomach dropped out. And I think that that's a good one to end on because, yeah, I knew where it was going and I'm still like, no. But yeah, that's been Se7en. Thank you guys for being here for this longer than average episode with some more general horror talk from us. We love you. Thank you for listening.
And some more genuine horror talk.
What's our next movie?
Have we talked to Jackson?
Nah, but we can probably swing him.
Okay,
We've got
so
an entire
I guess
week.
we're doing Alien.
Yeah, Alien. It's
Nice.
that's my one.
Cool.
Mine for the next one. I'm
Hell
pretty excited.
yeah,
'cause
baby.
I really like
I'm
Alien.
so pumped.
It's on Hulu
And
at the
then-
moment.
Cool,
for
good to know.
accessibility there.
Nice.
I'm live
And then we're
messaging
doing
Jackson
Slashtober.
right now.
And then it's Slashtober, babies.
Yeah.
So just double checking, both for my sake and the audience's, we're dropping Halloween this year, right?
No.
Are we
No,
not?
We have a final Halloween.
Oh, we
We're
have
doing the
Halloween.
final
It gets
one.
replaced next year.
I get to talk about super special OC Do Not Steal this year. I'm so excited.
Aren't you
God, I
so
sour
excited?
on
So
that movie,
excited.
Jordan.
I'm so glad that I'm
I'm
gonna watch
so
that.
excited
movie
to talk
again.
about this movie.
I'm so pumped. Slashtober's gonna be great this
We
year.
are
so
legitimately
hang in
hitting
for
the
that.
best Friday the 13th movie in most people's opinions.
I feel like you guys say
no,
this.
no,
every
seriously, we're hitting the
fucking year.
fourth one. Like, oh shit.
No,
wait,
Jason's in
fourth?
this one, I promise.
The fourth year of the podcast? No.
But
No, this is
he
the
has
third
the
one.
mask
Yeah,
this
no, this
time.
is the fourth.
Yeah, but we're hitting
but
the
yeah.
fourth Friday the 13th movie, which is generally regarded as the best one. So
I'm looking forward
Friday
to
the
it.
17th.
Anyway, I've been Nina. You can find me at Nina Wolverina on Twitter and still on Blue Sky and on Instagram. I am posting a lot of stuff. I have a secret project that's coming out in October. I feel pretty confident in saying that, but also if it changes, I'll let you know. Joining me is Noah.
Hello, I'm Noah. You can find me as Bubba the Bad, Bubbadabad. I am on most of the social media sites as that. Highlight, Letterboxd, and Blue Sky, and I've been trying to be more active on Tumblr. Be a non-sex bot that follows me challenge. Impossible. Actually, that reminds me, I have a screenshot of bot names to post into the chat where we've been sharing our good ones.
yeah, I've got a couple that I got to send there
Nice.
as well. In any case, I have been Jeff. You can find me on Tumblr at What Is It You Pray For, and nominally on Letterboxd at The Fakest Fan. But God, I just keep forgetting to use it.
Incredible. And I'm Emma, also known as Emma Panada. You can find me on Twitch and Twitter at Emma Panada. I'm also writing a TTRPG called All the Witches. You can find information about that at allthewitches_ on twitter.com or on Blue Sky at All the Witches, which is where we're being more active and posting stuff because Elon Musk sucks.
It does.
But yeah, thanks so much, everybody. We appreciate you hanging out with us. We hope you have a great next 2 weeks, and we'll see you next time. Goodbye.
I want to learn throat singing techniques so that I can also compete in
You
this.
should. It'll be good. It'll sound awesome.